Good evening, everybody. I'd like to open up the Manlius Town Board meeting for October 12th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. I would like to ask Councilor Italiano to lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As per usual, this is a hybrid virtual meeting. So we've got our two cameras here with mics. We've got a Zoom session going. Looks like we've got a few attendees. Information on how to join these meetings virtually is available on the top of each of our agendas. It streams to our website, to Facebook, and to YouTube. And if people are interested in participating in public hearings, we do have the capability to promote them from an attendee to a panelist, to let them speak and have their public comments heard from the comfort of wherever they're watching the meeting from. So first up, we have open podium. So open podium is an opportunity for residents to come to a town board meeting, talk directly to us, the board, with questions, concerns, comments. The only caveat we try to throw out there is if you're here for a public hearing in particular, that would be a comment you would save for the public hearing. So I just wanted to see, is there anybody here in attendance who would like to make a comment for open podium?
Hi, my name is Dave Barnwell. I just had a couple comments I wanted to ask about the ARPA funds. Obviously, they're coming up, and I know the survey's out. I was just wondering if that was going to be, again,
just
public.
At the last meeting when I told you we'll be putting that out, we'll be putting that out. We're just waiting to get as many of the responses as possible.
And my other thing is that just for some of that, I know that we look at different projects to have to spend that money on, and one that I thought might be of interest is for the highway department, there is no gas tanks at the highway town. They're only at the police department. And I think that some of that money could be used for possibly putting gas tanks at the highway garage. And the reason I say that is because of safety of hauling gas back and forth through the town, just in containers. And also some of the pickup trucks that they use down there use diesel motors. Those motors are at least $10,000 more in a pickup. So you'd be saving money along with putting money into a one-time fund. I also believe that it's some of those trucks that's harder because of the emissions to keep them up running the diesel motors. So the efficient gas motors would be a better idea.
That's great.
Also, I don't know if this is able to, I know you're gonna be talking about the town, possibly a new town hall. Some of the questions I just was wondering, I don't know if this is the right place, but I didn't know if it was gonna be, if you could discuss whether that was still going to be a leased deal, if it was something the town was gonna own, was the police department part of it? And if any consideration was taken from old plans from town hall plannings were taken into consideration in this.
So I will say that we are currently looking at a piece of property over on North Burdick Street. And we've got something on the agenda to help us figure out if that's an appropriate site. From the beginning, I mean, when did the new town hall project start? 10 years ago, probably. The police has always been considered as an essential part of that because they've been in a temporary facility since 1985. So that would definitely be part of that new town hall if we were to move in that direction. And as far as, previous plans, and I know we've had a feasibility study done about what we're looking for. There's a pretty extensive report available about looking at what we need, other facilities that would meet our needs that are similar to that. So we've been using a lot of that historic data as a way to really understand what that project could look like. And again, it's still in the very infancy stages. We are doing our best to see is this site in particular going to work for us? And if not, we would have to start back at square one and look for another site.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, are any of our virtual attendees here for open podium? Okay, so one last time, anybody here in the audience, if you'd like to make a comment open podium, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing no more in-person or virtual attendees, we'll move on to the next item. So this will be the public hearing for the zone change for the Seven Pines project at 8104, 8108, 8112, and 8116 Manlius Casanova Road from commercial A and RA to RM. We're gonna do seeker first.
So, before we do seeker, does somebody want to make a motion for us to declare the town board as lead agency for the zone change?
So I'll make a motion to declare the town board lead agency for this project of a zone change at 7 times 8104, 8108, 8112, and 8116 Manlius Road.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? We're gonna be opening up a public hearing shortly. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay,
So you want to explain what secret is?
Yeah, so before we consider the local law to change the zoning from CA and RA to RM, we have to do an analysis of the environmental impacts of zone change. In order to do that, we use a form that the state has provided, which kind of gives us a sense of what this local law will do, and they give us questions, they give the town board questions to answer to make a determination as to whether or not the local law, which is the zone change, would have a significant environmental impact. Let's keep in context what we're talking about here. We're talking about a local law that will change 3 of the 4 properties from CA to RM. CA is a much more intensive zoning in terms of its use and commercial use, to RM, which is a much less intensive zoning. And from RA to RM, you can argue that that might have an impact in terms of what you can do on the RA property. But again, please board consider the fact that right now there is an office building on that RA property. And the change would allow the office building to continue to stay there and also to have a residential unit, because I think the applicants reason for asking for the RM zoning is to allow for a mixed use of office space and residential. So please keep all that in mind as we go through this, the secret.
well, and I think it's also important to remind ourselves that this is about the zone change. This is not about potential development there, this is about the zone change itself.
Which, go ahead.
I was gonna say too, with RA, you can live there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, you can live there as an RA, but you can do more. Frankly, as an RA, you can have a farm there.
Yeah.
Practically, you can't because
Yeah.
it doesn't work
No.
for that site, but there's many more uses under RA than there would actually be under RM. So having said all of that, I'm going to go through the 11 questions on the short environmental assessment form. And the answer is either no or small impact may occur, or moderate to large impact may occur. After reviewing it myself, based on what we know what the local law does and what exists on the site already, my view is that it will be a no or small impact. But please feel free to step up and say what you want. The reason we have to do this is we can't open the public hearing until we make a environmental determination on it. So that's why we're going through this first. That will open up the public hearing. Okay. Okay. So first question is, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? Everyone agree that that's no or small impact? Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of the use of land?
Yes.
Less. It'll reduce it.
Small.
Small, no, small impact? Okay. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of an existing community?
No.
No to small. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that caused the establishment of a critical environmental area? The answer to that is no. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkways?
Small.
Small. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities?
No.
Will the proposed action and impact existing public-private water supplies?
No.
Or public-private wastewater treatment utilities? Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historical, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources?
No.
Very small.
Small.
Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in natural resources such as wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, or?
No.
No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems?
No.
No. And will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health?
No.
Okay. So based on the answers to the 11 questions, which are either no or a small environmental impact, again, from going from CA for 3 of the 4 properties to a less intensive zoning, because you can do much more in CA than you do in RA. And then the RA to, the RA to RM. I would recommend a determination that that will not have a significant.
So I would make a motion to declare.
A negative declaration.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so prior to opening up the public hearing, do we have the applicant in attendance?
Oh, no.
Could you repeat that, John?
Do we have the applicant in attendance, either here in person or remotely? Okay, if you're the applicant and you're here remotely, please use the raise hand function. Okay, so we will continue with the public hearing.
So I'd like to waive the reading of the public notice.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Oh, sure. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. So I would just ask, try to, keep the comment to 3 to 5 minutes so that everybody gets an opportunity to speak. Feel free to agree or disagree with previous commenters, just for the sake of time. But if people would like to be heard and need more time, we'll absolutely make that happen. So
So Dr. Sabadoff, if you want to come up to them and speak to the owl thing.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Dr. Sabadoff from White Sabadoff Chacon. Our practice started 75 years ago, and our practice has been in that office park for 30 years, over 30 years. We employ presently about 20 staff members in our practice. Not always, they're not all there at the same time, but we require a lot of parking, and we utilize the whole space in front of our building, which is 16 spots. I talked to Dr. Bach about this. We tried to get an amendment to our lease to provide for space for us. He said that's okay. He said, we'll sign an amendment. We had a lawyer drop an amendment. He wouldn't return it. And I asked him, where's the amendment? He said, well, I didn't speak to the other 2 partners. He first told me he doesn't have another partner. And then he said, there's 2 more people involved. So we're getting nowhere with him. We're not opposed to this change in zoning, but the vitality of our practice is dependent on our staff and patients accessing the practice. We were asking for simply a sign. There is actually a sign in the next parking lot. Only people, for this business can park in this lot, we're also controlled by. So that's one concern. The other is that the walls are kind of paper thin. We've actually had to tell someone upstairs, please don't wear your clogs. So we hear toilets flushing, we hear everything. It is not built for commercial, and I'm sure he could do things elsewhere. But there's 2 floors to the building, each building. We maintain about almost half of the upper floor also. So he told me, I'm in agreement that I will never put a commercial tenant along with your office on the 2nd floor as long as you're there. But all this means very little to me because he will not agree to anything in writing. The building was originally built by Frank Pizzica. In fact, since we're in a political environment, I could tell you we took over George Walkley's office. Remember that? Back when? Anyway, so He was great. Phil Reagan managed it for probably another 15 years or so, and he was great. And I'm not saying that Dr. Bat isn't, but the communication hasn't been good. It hasn't been in good faith. We've invested a lot of money with attorneys trying to get this a simple agreement to protect our practice, and he has not been agreeable. So my concern is if we could get that, then we're fine. You see, I know how it works in housing communities where someone has a party and next thing you know, there's like 10 more cars there. And even though there are other spots, we're concerned about ours. The other thing is our exam rooms are very quiet. We need to talk with our patients. We have barriers between the patients and us. We have HEPA filters going to protect us. And it's going to be difficult if someone's playing stereo upstairs, you know. So we're just concerned about our building and upholding what he said he was agreeable to, but he won't put it in writing.
And
If
which,
he would do that, I'm okay with that.
which,
building are you on?
yeah,
Building 7,
Which is, which address number?
that's 8116, because it'll be.
Thank you.
So is that CA or the?
It's CA.
The CA one. So right now, like, many things can go in there.
No, no,
Just
just the part of the application.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
My partner, Dave. By the way, we have a third new partner, Dr. Davis.
Hi folks, Dr. David Chacon. Just wanted to make a couple of clarifications to some of Len's comments. Again, we have been in this office park for an extended period of time. We're one of the original tenants. We've come to expect certain things and we feel that contractually, we've got them now. He mentioned a couple of, promises by the current landlord about not putting more commercial tenants with us. What he meant to say was residential tenants. Okay. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but, the issues are, overflow impeding, us to have an adequate number of parking spots to allow both our employees and our patients to get in and out, and noise abatement or lack thereof. Okay. And again, residential people in the other building, again, it's the same thing. You get a family lives there, you get 2 parking spots, but then the family has a party and they bring their friends over. Okay, their kids have a party and they bring their friends over. Parking spaces disappear very quickly. And also, noise coming from other buildings. If we were to have residential tenants in our building, then obviously that would be a severe issue. Okay, and as Dr. Saviroff said, we need to do what we do. We need to have a quiet environment. And residential tenants living upstairs, TV, stereos, general conversation. I mean, it just, it wouldn't work. And, we've done our best to act in a good faith interest, with the current landowners. And, they've given us stuff verbally, but they have been unwilling to commit in writing. So we're, needless to say, a little bit uncomfortable right now. Okay, so
Just a quick question for you. What's the nature of your practice? What type of medicine? do you
we're eye doctors. So yeah, can't have a lot of noise going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, as someone who doesn't like things near my eye, I appreciate that.
Okay, yeah, you don't have the stereo going off, worry about it. No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for your time. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Whoever would like to come up next?
For the record, Roseanne Gorfus, I live on Redstone Road, and my property is adjacent to the property in question right now. I know you've received letters from the neighborhood, so I won't repeat what really has been said. I won't read the letters, but I just want to emphasize a few things. We're very much a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood and somewhat of a historical neighborhood. I think we have some of the oldest homes in Manlius in that area. We've been there for 46 years and we've seen many changes. And I want to advocate for the overall betterment needs of the whole community presently and for the future. And that's why we're here. The main issues, and I'll be brief about this, traffic, privacy, the environment, and the future. In terms of traffic, right now we live with what's there already with a 9 to 5 format. which is manageable, and we have no weekends to worry about. All traffic is and will be impacted by any changes on Route 92. It is a problem yet to be solved. In terms of privacy, we would like and be aware of protection from anything from there that would be a cut through to our property, which would be a direct route to Mill Run Park, which is across from us. In terms of the environment, please be aware that Limestone Creek, which is right there, is precious and special in New York State. It's already been impacted by the bluffs and erosion there. Any more development will have more impact on that. Something that's not part of tonight's discussion, but is important, there is one more parcel that's for sale in that immediate area. It's a green space right now. Should that be subject to more building? We have stormwater problems, which are already in existence. And again, impact on Limestone Creek. For the future, we are opposed to any change that would limit our ability to comment on development there. We always want to have some kind of a voice and make sure that we have that voice because we live there. There are other neighbors here who will address other concerns, such as current compliance for what is already there, but to be continued. Thanks for listening.
I have a clarifying question though, Roseanne, what did you mean by we're opposed to anything that would limit our ability to comment? What do you
Well,
mean?
in terms of codes that are being proposed, if something is going to be allowed based on what the code says, if we have no future impact, because once the code is approved,
Once the
that's
zone
it.
is changed, you wouldn't be able to comment on future zone, but
future
the,
development, right,
you have site plan review with the planning board.
Yeah,
right. But in terms of the zone, if something is allowed because of the zone itself, it's allowed.
So there are existing buildings on the sites. So if new uses were brought into those buildings based on a change in the zone or the allowed uses in those zones, then you're right. It wouldn't have, you would just need a building permit for some of the inside work. Unless it was a use that required a special permit, which there are uses under the RM zone that require special permits. So there would be a public hearing for something like that. If it were just residential use, there probably wouldn't be any further review because it would be simply by building.
Exactly.
But I don't know of any property in the town of Manlius where if the residential use is allowed, that it would come before a town board or a planning board or zoning board of appeals or a residential type use.
right.
If it were a business that's going to affect parking, then a site plan would have to be reviewed by at least the planning board.
But again, just issues to bring to the fore so that we know it's been addressed.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, one more thing. Roseanne, I want to understand the general things that you've said make a lot of sense too for the site plan review process and for general environmental concerns. Tell me a little bit about why, if you're in favor of or opposed to the zone changes, the zone changes that we're discussing here today. So the CA to RA to RM.
CA to RM and
Well,
RM to RM.
I guess what I really would like to do is just call attention to the fact that whatever is approved, there are some concerns about it.
Sure.
I wouldn't say I am totally opposed, but I want to make sure that whatever is going to be approved has all these concerns taken into account.
You mean whatever's approved in the zone, so not like the site plan, you mean? So whatever is gonna be built or put into that zone, not necessarily.
I think it's more the consideration of the zone change to make sure that we're looking at these.
Okay, so
And making sure that if we don't have oversight to some of these, that some of them would be, there would be checks that would look for these things at a planning board site plan review.
right, well, I think that's why I'm trying to drill down because then other people want to comment. CA to RM is a less intense use.
Right.
But the RA to the RM is quite a change, Can we be clear about, can we go over really briefly the difference between RA and RM for the,
I think you only have that.
Okay, and Heather, what is going along with that?
yeah,
What I will say is I want to thank Counselor Denton for getting back to me because, you know, she read some of the comments. And I think as a layperson,
Yeah.
let's say, trying to read what the zone
Yeah.
was written as,
understood.
I didn't understand what was really allowed and what wasn't. She broke it down into this, and this, which made it a bit different from all of us when we first considered looking at it.
That's good.
Yeah.
But again, the point would be, if these are changes, you know, are we part of the decision? And does it sit with our residential area, our historical area, and what are of concerns to us?
Yeah, it's really interesting in the scope of the comprehensive plan conversation because what I think we've talked about in an abstract way before this particular public hearing was that we want to see more mixed development opportunities in order to have this transitional piece, but it's also important for us to consider exactly the neighborhoods that are in the part of that transition. But Elaine, did you want to share? Thank you for sharing that with me.
I can share my screen if you want me to.
Now, this was very helpful when you sent it, you know, just to be able to compare what it was all about, to be honest with you.
So this is RA, legally allowed uses and.
So right now, yeah, this is what it's currently zoned to be. So you could have somebody proposing to change the existing development into any of these things.
So one of the things that I think is important in this particular site is that the current use is not conforming.
And it's not,
Yeah.
the
Right.
current use doesn't fit.
Is
RA.
not actually permitted where it is.
It's not, yeah. We tried to find if there was actually some sort of document that showed us that it was
Yeah, like there
That it was
something-
ever permitted.
ever
We couldn't find it.
permitted. We could,
So there's a little history. And then this is what is allowed with RM.
So in terms of your concern in some of the letters around a restaurant or something, that does require a special use permit. It would not necessarily, it would definitely not be automatically permitted. That would be an opportunity where it might not be permitted, but retail would be permitted.
Right, and something here which kind of leaves me wondering, it says drive-through not allowed in RM, but the parcel that is now for sale,
They're CA.
advertised.
But it's currently
So they're
CA.
CA and so it is.
It's
allowed.
permitted
It
now.
would be allowed,
So that would be a concern we would bring to you in terms of future planning.
but if the board passes the local law tonight, if they just chooses to do so, then drive-throughs would not be allowed on those properties, because right now it is allowed on those properties because they're on at least 3 of the 4 properties,
Yeah.
because it's CA. So I think one of the reasons the board is even considering going to RM is because it's more in line with the types of uses that an office or residential mixed use development would have. And when I say development, it's not going to be developed because it is already developed. The buildings are there. So I think that is kind of where the board has been on this, is that RM kind of fits it better than CA, because in a CA, you could have a McDonald's.
we see it as an aligning versus a going out on.
But I think the point of residential uses not having that additional oversight, and not having that opportunity to comment on it is an interesting question that we should consider as part of this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and again, the lingering question, I don't know what that property for sale right now is really zoned at. So if it does,
CA.
CA.
it is CA.
Yeah.
And so is the house next door.
Yeah.
So is the house next door. to you.
Thank you again for this.
Would like to comment next?
Good evening, my name is Trevor Edgin. I reside at 4674 Whetstone Road with my wife Jennifer and our 2 daughters. We share a 185-foot property line to the rear of this property. Other than Chris Halliday, I have the largest shared property line with this parcel.
You're on Whetstone?
I'm in Whetstone, yep. So let me first, thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you for what each one of you do. I know it takes a lot of your personal time, and the community, I'm sure, appreciates it, but we certainly do. I do want to, since my wife, I think, is on through Zoom with our 2 children, I want to wish her a happy 15th wedding anniversary. I'll also mention, while I chose to spend my 15th wedding anniversary here with you folks tonight, the applicant didn't bother to show up. Yeah. I'll listen to a little background. I don't want to take too long. I wrote a letter, guys. It was
Yeah.
long. I'm not going to read it. Okay. I won't read, that would be very boring. I hate to be boring. But I would ask it be made a part of the public record. I also just some very brief background. I've been a real estate professional for over 15 years. I'm in front of planning boards, zoning boards, town councilors, all over the Northeast. I've literally done this dozens and dozens of times. And I've been a professional witness in federal court before. And I just, part of this, I want to commend town of Manlius. This mapping software, if this existed, and it really should be out there. If this existed in every municipality that I do business in, and by the way, it doesn't exist in any of them. And some of the largest, Brands, New Jersey, and Garden City, New York, they don't have any of this stuff. So if you click on one of these, you can see the zoning. There's a link to Eco 360 where I spend a lot of my time, and you can review all of these things just so seamlessly. So whoever, whether it was this regime or the past, congratulations, it's phenomenal. The investigation. I'm going to refer to this again. I don't know if there's a way from there.
I'll put it up on the screen too.
Yeah, you could read it. The blue box, that's my problem. The blue square. The blue behind me, this is the RA, this is 4B, 3B, 2B, and 3A for some odd reason, and then this is the parcel that we're referring to. We have a new neighbor between Roseanne and I, and Roseanne and George are in these 2 pieces here. Well, my neighbors will talk about some specifics.
Would you be able to bring that over here with your illustration?
And Elaine seems to be doing it.
So you're where?
So this is Whetstone, this is me.
Okay,
So this property line is the entire rear of, this is the, I'm gonna try to upside down here. This is the RA. And it's 4D.
okay.
These are the CAs. So what's interesting, and I can go through all the things that don't meet the current code, but that RA parcel houses all of the utility. It's your ingress and egress. And so I don't know the answer to this, and maybe the board can help us, but can CA use the utility of ingress and egress from an RA restricted parcel?
So one thing I will point out too is that part of that parcel is zone CA. And the way that this software works is we prefer not to have mixed zone parcels. Okay. This is something that happened a long time ago. Our software will look and determine, it knows the data we give it, what is the majority of it.
I noticed that it would jump around and include like 3, my parcel is actually zoned 3 different things, but it appears as though it really is just registering what's also adjacent to it. So I think the shared portion you're talking about is just the property line, right? So the portion of my property that's CA, I apologize.
No worries.
I think the portion of my property that's CA is this little chunk here, because which side of the line?
We've looked at other parcels, and so what my understanding is that this is likely zone CA, where I spent an hour in the basement looking for permits and plans, wasn't able to find them, but we're gonna continue looking to get a better understanding.
Okay, it seemed to me that it was like literally the line.
Yeah.
You don't know where the split is.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, as a general rule, we don't allow one zone, a property that's zoned one thing to provide access to a property that is owned something else. As a general rule,
Understood.
okay. This development took place probably early 90s.
Rosanna and George were there.
87.
Yeah,
was where we were
80s,
looking
yeah,
at.
I remember.
Late
For the last
80s.
Yeah.
I can't figure out how the RA property has an office on it, other than the only thing I can assume is some type of use variance was granted that we're just not being able to find.
It looks like it's just an error.
However it was done. Right now, it is a.
It was an error, how though? It said it's actually CA and it's just showing up as
I think
RA.
it's supposed to be CA. and
It's
then
probably
the
should have been
filled in the
rezoned
X
CA
number.
at the time.
Okay, yeah, that makes the most sense.
But the buildings have been built, there's a vested right that attaches to that after a certain period of time. We're still looking at that RA problem, because we just don't know the answer to the question. So if your question is, can you access the CA properties through an RA easement? Generally, we have not allowed that in the town as long as I've been attorney, and I've been the attorney for 20 years. So this happened 20 years before I was done.
Or the parking field, right? If you develop an RA parcel, right, and let's say you take this building down and you put a parking lot on it, but then you put, right, to your earlier point, the CA parcel would allow drive-throughs. If you start putting restaurants, houses, hotels, whatever it might be, and I understand that it's planning and zoning boards to achieve that, you lose a lot of the utility of this conversation with this board once you choose what you get. When I was talking about being in front of all of these boards, I will tell you, and New York State's kind of weird because it doesn't have the uniformity through municipalities, like New Jersey does. It's really tough to say. Zoning is the hardest thing in my experience to change. It doesn't, you guys yield a massive weapon here. When you start rezoning property, it changes what it can be forever. Yes, the applicant is talking about some residential units. He's talking about 13 today. And I understand that you guys aren't necessarily talking about that because it will eventually get pushed to planning and zoning. The problem is, if you stop this action today, it doesn't go any further. If you approve this action today, it goes from 13 units to 26 units immediately, and that's what Roseanne is talking
And
about.
I think that's the important consideration, is that that is one of the parcels as an RA. And if this doesn't go through and the current owner decides to sell it, they could buy the CA parcels, get separate access and put whatever they want there because it is zone CA. And that's where I think the board is really considering, is it more?
Supervisor, I would say, and I'm not trying to be antagonistic, but I would say that in the event that happens, for the same reason you guys are saying we'll be back in front of a public board, I'll be there, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about it again. The utility of those, like, somebody should have reverse subdivided those, put those things together, changed a lot of the things, but they didn't. The utility of those buildings, knocking those buildings down and redeveloping, now you're talking about maybe one facility to meet the parking code, which, you know, it doesn't, right, today. These are on my letter, there's a front yard setback. Let me say something interesting about this town's process, and maybe this is food for thought in the future. You guys are at a significant disadvantage. I've never seen an applicant put together such a weak presentation package. They didn't come here, they didn't present it, there's no engineer. I haven't seen a planner, I haven't seen a traffic engineer, and I understand that the board attorney is telling you that it's less impactful, but I'm also gonna tell you that your office use today requires one parking space per 300 square feet, whereas the other uses in RM require one per 200. So what's that tell you? It requires more parking, that means there's more activity. And, you know, some of my neighbors, by the way, this is the Whetstone community, and there's some online. But the utility of the parking field will be expanded hours. So there's something to consider there. One of the basic questions I had, right, I'm gonna ask the board this. What does the town get out of this? This is a legitimate, serious question. I'm curious what the positive impact for the community is by changing this.
Basically, the transition between residential neighborhoods and the village line and Andrews Road, basically. So across the street already is RM. And this would simply make that consistent. To remove the CA and make it RM instead would give this less intensive use to ensure that in the future, should somebody buy this property and tear down these buildings and do something else, that they would have to do something that is less intensive than what could be permitted in
But
CA.
Ms. Golden, you have the power to do that now. You could prevent that now, your planning board and your zoning board.
No, I mean, if something's permitted, you have to check with it.
And if it's CA and somebody comes in with a site plan and the property, the use on the property is already allowed under zoning.
I'm not applying to the arbitrary, what I am saying is,
I know you're not applying the arbitrary caprice. I'm telling you that the planning board would have to look at a site plan for a commercial property. And unless there was something that was extraordinarily outside of the prerogative of the planning board, you get to use your property as its zone.
Sure.
So the planning board would have to look at it, they would look at ingress, egress, they'd look at lighting, they'd look at entrances and exits, like we do on all planning board site plans. And
The Chick-fil-A
but they
form.
but they can't say, we don't want a McDonald's there. They could say, we want a smaller McDonald's, or we don't want a drive-through on your McDonald's, but they can't say, you can't put a McDonald's there. That-
If I may, would you be willing to yield to some other folks just so that we can continue the conversation going?
respectfully, no. Sorry, I apologize.
But you, first of all, this is a public comment period, you get to comment, the board is not to, really, it doesn't have to, it doesn't,
Have to be.
we generally don't answer questions during a public comment period. But they're,
We tend to be more conversational in nature.
Which makes it go long.
You
Please go ahead.
Keep it
No,
3 to 5 minutes.
I do appreciate it. I would like to know what happens, and I think this is my primary concern. What happens when you zone a property into nonconformity? The CA parcel closest to my backyard has a 30-foot setback currently, right? It's required to have a 40-foot setback. Now, it's interesting, when you guys talk about the RA, that actually does have a 40-foot setback. Even though office wouldn't have, had they zoned it to CA, so we can't speculate on what happened so long ago. But you're zoning 4B into non-conformity just by changing the use, right? You normally, if you went in to change the use this monolithically, you'd be cracking the door open to comments and changes and things of that nature. And it's, I mean, the front yard is maybe 10 feet. And it doesn't have 150 feet of frontage. You can't possibly meet the parking code on that parcel for, I think it's, that one has 7 units proposed. And then the square footage is interesting, and I apologize, Mr. Fischetti,
protesting.
right?
I've heard it in
I-
every iteration.
Is the parking code for RM is just a blanket 1 per 200, or is it use specific?
I think it's 1 per 200.
We
So-
just
so regard-
updated this.
We updated.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually.
Two per
I was
apartment,
on
two
the
per
planning. But it sounds like it's just 1 per 200. So when you start talking about more intense uses, like retail and public gathering, although I'm not necessarily sure what that is, you're talking about things that probably need more than 1 per 200 parking stalls. And on top of that, you haven't even really met the 1 per 200 plus the 2 per bedroom that you have. Residential setbacks in any of these zone locations are all 40 feet. And that is going to be, right, so you got a second floor residence. I wish on top of a detailed survey, which you should be entitled to, or to review this, there was also topography, right? If you had a topo survey, what you'd see is that property is actually about 20 feet above mine. Whetstone Road runs down to the bridge that's being repaired. My property, mine and Jennifer, it runs down to that bridge and drops off, so I slope up. So if you have a resident nights and weekends, particularly weekends, you've got somebody on the second floor of that looking at my wife and children swim in our pool. When we moved in, again, this is one of the things that was on my letter, you know, there was a buffer, there were really mature cedar trees, we didn't know anything was back there, it was fantastic. We're gone business hours, while they're there, when we come back. Those have just fallen into total disrepair, so I see a parking lot in my backyard, but only during business hours, not nights and weekends, and that would change with residential use. The thing that I would say about the town's goal to add mixed use and add residential. I don't know if you were doing a new development. I know this board recently, I shouldn't say recently, but they had the dentist office that got built over by East Bay. That was a rezone, right? I think it was the same. It was like out of the RA to RM, but prior to adding residential to that, I think. That was new construction, which meant new ratables and more tax base, right? In our case, you'd be talking about adding residential without adding any tax base to our school system, to our emergency services. So you're adding literally tax on the town without actually adding any tax basis to support that. And for that reason, I think it's completely inappropriate to start to talk about changing this use. If somebody wanted to build a mixed-use development, there is a vacant lot, zoned RM, sitting on the corner at Enders and Casanova Road. They're welcome to develop there, and then you will get new ratables, and you will get new contribution to our public services. Otherwise, we're subsidizing somebody else's essentially greed. And one of the other things that's important is that this is self-imposed. This gentleman purchased this property this way and has now come in and decided he can make more money a different way. It's unfair for him to be able to do that at my expense and my neighbor's expense. And frankly, as I just mentioned, I think it's at the expense of the town.
Well, the taxes could go up because the assessment could go up after the renovations are completed.
It'd be construction building permits. I think you'd find it to be marginal. I speculate, but you should think of it. I would appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll send something to the board and I'll also actually make part of the public record. It will outline the deficiencies in parking, the deficiencies in lot coverage, right? Again, these are things that I would expect you to have a chance to review before you change the zone. If it were vacant land, then we'd be talking about somebody coming and presenting those things to your planning and zoning board of experience with. But you're zoning existing buildings into non-conformity, and that's strange. I don't know if there's any precedent for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Would like to speak next? So I would like to ask the board, we don't have to make a decision tonight, and we could hold the public hearing open. Would you like to hear more comments?
I just have to letters that need to be entered into the record. I actually think with the owl, I could probably stay
You probably
right
can,
here.
yeah.
I did receive some letters from residents regarding this, and I will just read who the letter is from and whether they were for or against it, but these letters have all been distributed to the town board and then have been added to the official record. If any came in after the fact, I will make sure that that is done as well. I received a letter from John Goodman, and he is in opposition of the project. He states that he is 5 lots down from the proposed project. I received a letter from Roseanne and George Lurfees, and they live near the project as well. They are in opposition. I received a letter from Trevor Edkin, who is in opposition, and his property. I received a letter from Brian and Deborah Kelly, who are on Whetstone Road, and they are strongly opposed to the zone change as well.
So tell me if I'm off base here, but I think this would be a good time to move on, but hold the public hearing open and ask for more questions, more concerns, and give us an opportunity also to speak with the developer. And we can get some more answers and see if there's room for that.
I'd like to make a comment.
Would you come back up?
Yes. Video. I've been in practice for 43 years. Running a corporation. I have never had a situation where someone doesn't answer my emails, or in a situation where I create legal documents for someone, they don't sign them or get back to me. There's something wrong here as far as communication or intent. And I think that's a concern you should all consider who you're dealing with here.
Absolutely.
He tells me there's no partners, then he says there's 3 partners. And I think that weighs heavily.
Thank you.
Let me just quick. I want to thank the board that we're able to do this, because when this went on in 1987, the zone changes and the building and all that, the neighbors didn't even know what was happening. We ended up getting a lawyer after the fact. They put up the berm because of that, and then they put in trees, which the deer all ate. But I mean, so we've been living with that for the longest time, but at least now we get a chance to voice our opinion, whatever you do. We didn't have that chance before, and it cost us all $1,000 a piece or something like to, come before things again. So thank you for that.
Hi, my name is Brian Kelly. I reside on Whetstone Road. I have a little experience with zoning, not a lot. I am an architect by trade. And my concern is the RA parcel. And I want to speculate a bit about why it is RA. Now, I don't have any historical proof on this, but I believe it was zoned RA to create a buffer between that commercial agricultural area and the residential area, which is just east of it. I know the houses, that region, that area was part of the military school at one time, so most of those houses, I think that the town maybe at one time wanted to protect that area from the possible development that could occur there. I mean, as far as the CA, I hear the arguments both ways. So, but I think the fact that it is RA was done on purpose to send a strong message to the possible development that could occur. And that's just speculation.
That would make sense if they didn't put an office building.
Right, well, there may have been a variance that applied.
Yeah, they might have got a use variance, that's the only thing I can think of.
And honestly, I don't understand why this.
And I'll tell you, that's why we've been looking to try and find some historical record.
Doesn't just apply for a variance.
Good.
Which would be a simple solution to his problem. But they're
Before
not
they
here
built this, was it just
to
an
defend
open field?
themselves.
No, it's houses.
Was it an open field before? They don't think
It was the old suburban park.
No,
No, it
No,
wasn't.
it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was a tennis school.
There was a tennis court.
Oh,
It was
that's
part of the school.
Suburban park.
That was part of the
field.
Okay, okay, so I want to bring us back to a focus. Are you, is there anything else
I
like
just
that?
believe that the buffer needs to remain between that residential area, and especially the backyards of the
Absolutely.
neighbors. And the potential for additional parking, that kind of runoff, I mean, the creek is right there, those little things. I think the environmental impact is more substantial than people understand for development in that area.
Thank you.
I think our A zone allows for R3 uses. I believe the R3 uses like the R1 uses allow for professional offices. And I think that's how you got professional offices. So we want to look at the.
Thank you.
They don't have any earthly building.
Okay,
So,
given that we need a lot of information,
We'll hold
we've
it
heard a lot of
open.
information, we'll hold this public hearing open. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Everyone on board with that?
thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for coming.
Do I need to reattend another meeting?
So we will hold it open. So what our goal here is going to be to find more information specifically about this RA parcel, to talk to the developer to get some answers to some questions. And we will reconvene this public hearing, but everyone will be notified of when that happens. And we do have the virtual attendance. And it would really only be needed if there's further questions, comments, concerns, or a rebuttal to any new comments that come.
Sure, well, we get another notice from the map.
No, this is the same public hearing.
So when are we going to, are you adjourning the public hearing until the next meeting?
Well, I think we're leaving it open so we can receive
the
email
next meeting?
communication.
To the next meeting.
Yeah, through till
So
the
it'll be at the
next
next meeting.
Then we'll close it. If people are here and they come to speak, we'll listen to them again and or, new people, and then we'll close the public hearing and vote at that time.
But I just want to say, does not guarantee we will go to the next meeting, because if you still don't have the information, we won't be able to. Right.
Thank you for clarifying.
You can subscribe to our email, get our agendas every time.
Okay, yeah.
Please do.
I mean.
But the public hearing will continue until.
Until we
Until we
get
close.
the-
I would also just like to say that this is also in my backyard as well. I did also get this notice about this too. So I live on Burbank, so this is also in my backyard as well. So I am taking all of this under serious consideration, just as you guys are as well. I am concerned about the lighting and everything.
And we really appreciate all the comments you received. It really does help us make these decisions. And I'm happy that we've been able to start a dialogue, because I don't think that's gonna stop anytime soon. And it definitely won't stop until the public hearings.
Yeah, and we appreciate your letters.
I don't see offices in our.
The details.
There's, just for clarification, I don't see offices in R3, so
Are we good to move on then?
I think we are.
Okay, fantastic.
Do we need a motion to keep going?
Yeah, make a motion to adjourn the public hearing to the next meeting at 6:30.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn the public hearing to 6:30, unless we already have somebody at 6:40, right?
6:35.
Okay, 6:35 on the 26th.
And I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Okay,
You're welcome to stay till the end.
yeah, we're gonna talk about a lot of really interesting stuff. So we're encouraging you to stay. We're tuning from home. Okay, so moving on, can I get a motion to waive the reading of
I
the?
make a motion to waive the reading of the public hearing to the fire country public notice.
Reading of public notice.
Reading of public notice. What did I say here? Sorry, public notice.
Okay, a second? A second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Motion open.
Motion to open the public hearing.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
But you're back wearing a different hat.
Yeah, I apologize, I'm shut back up a little bit, so. I wanna
Talk
see
to the aisle.
So, so thank you again for being able to be here this evening to kind of talk about all the things happening in the Fayetteville Fire Protection District, in the village of Fayetteville and town of Manlius. I want to thank our chief and our officers and our members of the fire department. You'll see through the numbers here in this presentation, they dedicate countless hours of their time, their talents, and then sometimes their treasure for the betterment of our community. So I want to first thank them all. I also want to thank our mutual aid departments, especially Manlius is here today. We are partnering every day, every hour of every week with the Manlius, Manoa, Fayetteville, Kirkville, and DeWitt fire departments to provide the service that we provide. I want to thank the residents for continuing to support the fire department. I looked at we protect over $680 million worth of property in the Fayetteville Fire Protection District, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And they do that without, they do it. You don't even know they're doing it, they're doing it. So I want to thank, again, all of them. I want to thank our clerk who put together this beautiful spreadsheet and was working with the town. And then also the village trustees, because they go through line, and Sarah's there and Elaine's there, they go through line by line by line, because we really do look at every penny and every dollar. Public safety is our #1 priority, and I want to thank the police and the CRC for all the work that they do, because they have a substation in our fire department. We work very well together. We coordinate a lot of events together, and I think it's really important to make sure that we continue that relationship, because we all benefit from that. Sarah, you sent us a study, and I have one to give back to you. The Rockefeller Institute of Government actually put out a study that actually shows that the model that Fayetteville, Manlius, and other communities are using is what everybody should be looking at. And this town has been very supportive of this for years and years and years. We don't have the problems that other communities have. If you've noticed and read the paper recently, there's communities that are closing their fire departments or don't have enough people to respond. And all of you have heard my responses when we're first doing Bridgeport, first doing Chittenden, first doing. Those town boards and those village boards have to answer to somebody one time, or if their house burns down and Fayetteville's the first one there, why? You don't have to worry about that, because we've restructured the fire department, EMS and fire, as well as Manlius has, to make sure that we have 2 ambulances on service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we have a fire crew on, as well as volunteers at the station every night. There's 8 to 12 people that volunteer their time from 6 at night till 6 in the morning, 7 days a week at the station. And you'll see that in the presentation. And I just think, those are numbers that are important, because people are volunteering their times, but we also have to fill in with career staff. And you're gonna see the increases with the career staff. we're seeing less and less volunteers. We're still getting people in the door, just not as many as we used to. It's becoming harder and harder for people to volunteer. The duty night program helps. It brings people in and gives them, they know they're on every Monday night from 6 to 6 or Tuesday night or Wednesday night. But it's still hard for someone to give up 12 hours a week and training hours and other activities at the station. And last, there's an open house this Saturday from 10 to 2. I would really recommend, and I know I've said this before, please come and see all the things that are happening at our station, as well as, the chief has offered everyone a ride along. I think it's really important, and I know Sarah and Lane, we took that really good tour that one time for a couple hours. But spend a shift, even if it's 8 to 10 or 6 to 10, just to see what a daily shift is like for a volunteer or for a staff member. And I think it's really important just because numbers are numbers, but what they do and how they do it and the people that we serve, I think is more important than sometimes the numbers. So, you skip through all that, I guess.
I just thought it was a great background while you were talking.
Okay, so, if you look, we adjusted the numbers a little bit towards the end, and I apologize, but there was always we knew there was gonna be some influx. Overall, the numbers, while they're up a little bit, we're in this new mode of kind of restructuring. The Village of Fayetteville was taking on all the debt for the bonded part of the trucks. We're not doing that in this budget. This is the first budget where we're taking money and we're putting into a reserve account, and we'll give you a balance of it every year. And you'll see the money in that account. But when we go to buy them next time, we won't have to bond for those trucks. We'll be paying cash for those. So we were just approved 2 ambulances at our last meeting. And to give you some context, and I know Sarah was there, and my chin hit the ground. When I started at the fire department in 1984, ambulances were worth $50,000, $60,000. The ones we approved at our last meeting are $252,000. Same ambulances that we buy before.
They're
They've
the
gone from
same.
172,000 to 252,000.
The technology is like similar enough that like that's a $200,000 increase and then pretty much the same view.
Well, that was from, I said 1984.
Okay, so inflation.
2022, so we won't get it for 2 years, but just to give you a price example, they've gone up that much in that time frame. But since we last purchased them with Manlius, and we're gonna do that again, we're being purchasing 4 ambulances together, we get the best price. It went from 172 to 252. You'll put in the trade-ins and we'll be around 222, hopefully, but we don't know until they show up.
Yeah.
But the cost of these equipment is going up and up and up, and the call line is going up and up. Recently, you guys you're in the middle of approving maybe a new memory care facility up at the medical center, as well as an A&E SMY surgery center. Okay, when we talked about 3900 Medical Center Drive, I called the cruise ship on that. If you guys remember, some of you, most of you weren't here. 20 to 50 calls was what we were told. It's over 120 calls a year. These facilities are, the person here who spoke earlier talked about how we're subsidizing. The taxpayers in the Fayetteville Fire District are subsidizing Maple Downs, Brookdale, Fayetteville, Brookdale, Eastside Manor, 4,000 Medical Center Drive, 3,900 Medical Center Drive, and 100 Town Drive. Because, I'm just gonna use your name because I know you're the best. We go to your house once a lifetime, maybe twice a lifetime. We're going to some of these locations 300-400 times a year. And the fire tax is not covering the cost of what it costs to provide the service. We've got to figure it out. Tim's been here long enough to know. I've said this before. There's got to be a way that we can recoup that so the residents aren't paying for a commercial entity that's for profit, making money off the taxpayers. There's got to be a way we can do this. There's got to be a special tax. There's got to be something that can be done so that the burden is not all on the taxpayers of the Fayetteville Fire Protection.
And you're referring to the fire side of that?
No, this is combined, fire and EMS. So, but like you and I, let's just say, if I lived in the town, I'd pay $291 times $200,000. That's $580. We may not go to your house at all, but it's $580 to protect your house for a year. It's a pretty good deal. It's about $1.60 a day. It's a pretty good deal. We go to the 3,900 Medical Center Drive. Let's just say it's assessed at 3 million or 4 million or 5 million, whatever it is. The fire tax does not cover what it costs. We lose money on every ambulance.
Would we be able to figure those figures out and see what it is costing taxpayers?
Yes.
Great.
I mean, we're not going to be to the penny, but we're going to get you.
Yeah, ballpark, yeah.
Can we ask you to put your country hat on for a second and tell us about the larger planning around emergency services or ideas and momentum, especially with a giant, with all the changes that are coming with many more people moving in? to the county.
The study part will give us more information, but the study's never gonna say, you have to do it this way. It's just gonna put a model out there that says this is probably. The issue that we're gonna have is in town of Manlius, they're doing it the right way. You guys are actually, we're spending money. We're actually doing it so that our residents are covered and safe at all times. Other communities aren't doing that. So I think we're gonna be in a much better position. Because just the first initial blush, looking at the numbers through the Office of Emergency Management, the model they think should be used is Fayetteville Manlius to do it. Career volunteers working together, because all those volunteers are saving you money. You're not, you are spending money on insurance and other things, but we're not getting charged for the labor. You know, new firefighters, new EMTs, new paramedics, you know, they're in the $40,000 to $60,000 range plus benefits for each new employee. It's expensive. So I think the career volunteer combination that we have is working very well. We just need to find other municipalities that take it as seriously as the town of Manlius does in the village of Fayetteville, village of Manlius, and village of Manlius. Because some just don't. I used it up. I know the other, it was a reported fire. It was a fire. We were first due. That's wrong. That's wrong for the residents of that community. That's wrong for our residents, because we're there to support and help. As mutually, we're not there to be the first responders. And other communities have to take this seriously. Public safety is important.
Are we
And
subsidizing those taxpayers?
absolutely.
That's
But
what,
mutual aid is a two-way street. We can't do it without, we only have 9 to 11 people on a scene in the beginning of a fire. We need 17 people. So we don't have the numbers that we need without mutual aid. But the problem is that sometimes it's just not. And they're struggling with daytime responses where we've had people there during the day and they're responding on nights and weekends. So everybody has their challenges, but we just want everybody to realize there's an issue. And going back to your county thing, that's what's going to come. We're going to tackle EMS because that's about 80% of the calls, and show them here's the way we think you should be looking at here's. And we've got to get, and John's part of the group, the mayors and the town supervisors are going to get together because they need to start realizing how important this is. It's not just, oh, well, you deal with it.
Yeah.
They're gonna call you, they're gonna call me,
You
they're
said it
gonna call-
perfectly. If we're subsidizing surrounding municipalities, we should be working together to solve this problem rather than people looking at us and saying, well, no, you can handle the load clearly because our taxpayers are paying money for other people to receive services. And while it's an amazing service and we want to support the fire department in the way we can, we have to recoup those expenses. The same way we receive a bill from our fire departments for our portion.
Mhm.
It would make sense that anybody else receiving those services would receive a portion of that bill.
They do pay 100% of the bill, say we go to the city,
Mhm.
they pay 100% of the bill, but even at 100%,
Yeah.
not everybody can pay.
Mhm.
So you're not collecting 100%, so you're losing money on that.
I mean, what I hope that people are getting out of the conversation too is understanding that we're glad we have the fire service that we have and we know everyone and we value our neighbors. We also don't have choices.
Yeah.
And so that means that the decisions that are being made have to be the best. So we have transparency here, you're coming, but we're in a really tough spot in terms of the taxpayers confused about, oh my gosh, this capital project for the school, this is the way we're handling debt for the fire department. Oh, what does the town need for the police department and perhaps a new town hall? It's really confusing for folks. So it's everything at once.
Mhm.
So I think that coming up with an equity-ish model for making sure that the people who are kind of freeloading, I say lovingly, are represented makes sense. Also thinking creatively, like you have that amazing, the Bunkin program or the way to defray costs for people who are attending
OCC. and
college
Yeah.
programs, that they can get kind of their room and board in exchange for their service, things like that can make a real difference. So I think we want to be the best in all those realms.
But we have to figure out how to pay for it because
Yeah.
what we have to deal with right now with this budget is an 8% increase to this line item with a tax cap of 2%. And that's a very difficult thing for this board to be able to do because
then we have to cut things on the.
well,
other
in
side.
previous years, we've seen some departments take much smaller increases or take decreases while the other ones are pushing forward. But we're in a situation this year, which, I mean, the total figure across all the departments, we have a $216,000 impact on our budget, which means we have to pay you guys to provide that protection and we have to figure out what to cut to pay that. And it gets into a really tricky situation because now we've got to go to our residents and say, well, we can't pay less to the fire department. So what do we cut? Do we look at the police department, another service that is amazing? Do we look at our highway department, which is another amazing service we provide? And that's where we get in the bind. And that's where I think moving forward, we can do what we can to manage that. But moving forward, we need to find a more equitable way to fund this fire department, quite honestly. Whether it's looking at commercial entities, whether it's looking at our neighbors and making sure those bills get paid. Because it's difficult for us. It is a significant impact to our budget.
Yeah.
And especially in a year where we don't see a decrease, we just have to find that money, and we can't ask you to cut services, but now we have to do something. We have to cut something in our budget to absorb this increase. In a different situation, we would go out to bid and see what the market would provide. But we can't do that in this situation. And that's really where this is the hard truth. And so I appreciate you bringing up, equitable ways to help fund this, because I think that's in everyone's interest, quite honestly.
There is one, the ladder truck is the final payment that's in this 2023 contract. So that's a savings of 40,000, almost 41,000. And I will let you know that the fire station is paid off. The final payment is 2026. That's $361,000.
So if we look at it over the years to come, we
Yes.
can see that, and that kind of strategizing, if that's happening with all of the fire service teams, and that's great, like, we want that to be for Minot, we want that to be for, we want to understand that. That's more sophisticated than we've done as a community, and,
But I thought, just tell me if I'm wrong, and I know it's different in the village because it's part of our tax rate. But you send your town tax bills out, and there's a line for the fire tax. If a person didn't pay a bill, and it's actually going down per 1,000 this year in this budget. But yet you're saying, I understand the dollar figures up, but I didn't think the fire contract affected.
Our
Tax cap.
Okay, but you, okay.
In order to stick to the tax cap, we have to cut.
I would love to be able to
say.
say to you, I'd love to keep under the tax cap, but then tell
The
me who-
special districts.
where should I not respond to?
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right.
No, exactly. That's the bind we're in. Because now we have to answer that question with either our highway department or our police department. We gotta answer that question.
Right.
And
And again, that's what I
That's a
think,
tough
working with
conversation.
you, with the town supervisors, the mayor,
Yeah.
saying to these other entities, it's time to step up.
Yeah.
Man, like I sent a letter to the town supervisor, Sullivan. And he never responded, but he called me and said.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
I
I
have
think,
a contract.
I think
with
we should
AMR,
reach out
they
and
don't
I can let him
respond.
know that we absorb those costs, we find a way to do it, and I would appreciate some support in that.
Yeah.
Because right now, we are paying for fire services and EMS services that are being received by non-residents, and the taxpayers are paying for it.
Exactly. Yeah. But we want to continue to provide it. That we want to make sure that our residents, all 28,000 or 32,000, whatever the number is today.
no one
are
wants to see
protected
neighbor in neighbor.
24/7.
Exactly.
And we're not getting complaints. And I think we all agree that no one's calling you saying this is ridiculous, they didn't show up, or this is we're not happy with this, because none of you have said it, none of you called, none of you have written me letters or emails and saying, and I think that the service that the three departments and the Kirkville Fire
Yeah.
District provide are
And
second to
I
none.
will say too, I know Counselor Bollinger attended the public hearing for the budget. We had asked to keep the town portion of that budget to 2 to 5%. We are looking at 8%. So I think moving forward, I think we would like to really be part of that conversation earlier on.
Mhm.
And I think this equity solution is how we get there, is how we get it so that the town portion stays within a reasonable amount that we can budget for, while you don't receive any less funds to provide the services you're providing.
And just to put it in a little context, so you went, last year you were 1.845, this year you're 1.9, the year before you were 1.95.
Mhm.
So we're only, in 2 years, we're up about
And
44,000.
in 3 years, we've seen a 16% increase, a total of a $283 impact to our budget.
But the village's share, just to put it in some context, went from 600 to 962,000. So we're sharing in this burden as well.
Yeah.
Right, you're seeing it too, it's like pushing upstream, and
Yeah.
yeah.
But I will push back
Yeah.
and say 83% of the calls are in the town, they're not in the
Yeah.
village, but we pay 33% of the budget.
Mhm.
That's not right.
But the town residents don't vote on the budget.
That's law.
Yeah,
Change New York State law.
I would love to change that. law.
Then do it. Don't talk, do it. Okay?
I would really
So-
appreciate some respect, Mayor Olson.
No, I'm saying, we've had this conversation many times at the town board. I've been here since 2004. everybody, the equity in this process is wrong, but no one's changed it.
Yeah.
The 67-33 is the only way, fairest way that we can do it.
Yeah.
The other part of it is changing state law, and no one is willing to step up and change state law. We would love it because then we would pay less.
The answer can also be that we don't have walls. You have come here, we're all willing to work together. We have to be willing to do this for the taxpayers and for the people.
And
And
it's
if
the
we,
same people, are the
Right, but I don't want to put the
taxpayers.
burden on, I don't want to put more burden on the town because you would be paying 83% of a budget that you don't want, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know a fair way to do it other than the way we're doing it. I don't
Yeah.
agree with it, and John Curtin, I think it was, John Curtis, God rest his soul, I used to, and John Laughlin and others, I used to say, this isn't fair, this isn't right. But they said this is the fairest, most equitable way. And after years and years of looking at it and trying, it is truly the most, it's based on the assessed valuation of the fire district.
Yeah.
What portions in the town,
Well,
what
I
portions in the
still
village.
think that we could move toward a consolidation.
Really, do you have any input on the Kirkville Fire District budget this year?
I would be happy to.
No, do you have any input on that tax rate?
I do not, but
Okay,
that would be
that's
one
what
of the
would
things I
happen.
would like to
It's
change.
interesting, because they're one of the higher ones,
Yes,
even though
exactly.
they're, lower,
Right,
but it's because. of the
and
assessment.
Janesville and DeWitt and all the other fire districts in the thing, if you look, are 30
I
to
have
40
that same
percent,
study right here.
30 to 40% higher than you are paying this year. 30 to 40% higher. That's a big number.
Yeah.
So we're trying to spend, and when you take 361 out of it, that is a big number for the building being paid.
yeah,
It's a big number.
and it's coming up, I know, it's like, I know, but I mean.
Well, it sounds like we've got some next steps. I think the commercial property equity piece.
If there's
is-
a way, that's where we should change.
And
the law.
that's where I think it makes the most sense to go first.
Yeah.
Because we know that we have the numbers, as you stated,
We
ballpark.
can tell
figures.
you exactly how many taxes are there and what, and you would be able to give us the data on their assessed value and then what they pay for a fire truck. So we would be able to tell you.
And I think that would be a great first step towards that more equitable solution, which would also mean that the tax would be providing more of the portion.
The people using the service would be paying.
Exactly, but that where the village is using 18% of the services, if we were able to bring commercial properties that are causing you to service the town as a bigger proportion, we could really help offset that switch, where we would move towards supporting 82% of the budget, but we would have another revenue mechanism to offset that cost to the residents rather than the commercial properties.
The capital planning too is gonna save us money.
I think it's good, because then you're not gonna see a spike.
We're not gonna see. it. So
And I think that, we've been working
We
hard on the
appreciate
budget to
that.
smooth things out, and I'm
We
happy to
appreciate
hear.
that.
that was, exactly, yeah. I mean, if we did it with the AEDs and the other, and the monitors and then we're still going for grants. The
Yeah.
grants,
Yeah.
you know, I know that the police department got ARP money. We actually got it from the saver from the federal government for all 4 departments. So that
Yes.
saved money.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little things that we can kind of do.
And other departments didn't.
Yeah.
So, in other parts of the county.
Oh, yeah,
They didn't. get that.
No, understood.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I know,
So-
that's hard.
Is there anyone in attendance that'd like to make a comment for a public hearing? Is there any remote attendees who'd like to make a comment for the public hearing? If so, please use the raise hand function. Okay, one more time. Anybody here like to make a public comment? Okay, thank you very much for the
Thank you.
presentation. Really appreciate the conversation.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Well, second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Oh, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the 2023 Fayetteville Fire Protection Contract in the amount of $1,994,075 as prepared by the attorney for the town and to authorize the supervisor to sign the contract.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's roll right into the next
All
one.
right, make a motion to waive the reading of the public notice regarding the Manlius fire. Chief.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll make a motion to open the hearing.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have the presentation?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Congratulations on your recognition. Mayor Will.
I don't really know that there's much more that I can say.
Yeah, we can just go through the slides if you want.
I love it when he goes first.
We'll have to change it up next time.
I can just,
You got like
Thank you.
25 minutes.
Consider. The only thing I can tell you with us is, I mean, we're in the same boat there, and we work so close together. And with Manolo, and I'm just gonna say that the three of us in the town work so close together that we're in sync with everything we do. We cover each other, we go to some of the same areas outside our fire protection district. So we're familiar with everything. We purchase the same ambulance. We're now purchasing the same fire trucks because we get better pricing. And if for some reason we go to a fire in Fayetteville and something happens and one of their firefighters is operating, one of their pumpers goes down, one of our guys will be able to operate their pumper, which never happened years ago. When we ride the ambulances, they're exactly the same. So if I on an ambulance and I hop in the Fayetteville ambulance, I'm gonna go exactly with every piece of equipment. I'm not gonna be fumbling around by the person laying on the stretcher or having a heart attack. So we work very well together. We do a lot of training together. We do a lot of training. As you see there, 43, almost 4,400 hours of training. And the duty hours are 37,000. So that was just last year.
Yeah.
This year, we're probably gonna be somewhere that just need us calls alone, we're gonna be over 600 calls.
Wow.
From last year. That's huge. Something that we really don't right now, we're trying to control, what we don't have control over. And I can say that the two chiefs in our two departments and with the nose department work so closely together to try to come up with solutions to handle the offloading at the hospitals, the delay of the offloading at the hospitals, the calls that we go outside our territory, the different things that we do that affects one department and most likely affects the other. So by the two of them working together, I'm sure both of them would rather be somewhere else. But working together, they're able to conquer whatever issues we've got going on. So we solve not only the issue for the Fayetteville Fire Department, we solve the issue for Manlius Fire Department, the Yolo Fire Department, and sometimes with certain things we solve with the Jewett Fire Department. We work so closely to do it. They don't have any ambulance service, but we work so close with fires. Yeah, we go to a lot of different places. A lot more than we used to. We used to go, there was no big deal. To Chittenden, or Casanova, our neighboring communities, Pompey. You know, we cover a huge territory in Pompey. We contract with Pompey. And we just met with them last week. And what we used to cover in Pompey probably now is close to double because the other services can't cover that. And when the mayor of Fayetteville tells you that we're first on the scene at a call in Chittenden or Bridgeport, we're first on the scene at a call in Pompey, in the center of their community, or in Delphi Falls. That's a 10-mile drive for us. And that's, believe me, if I lived in those territories and I knew that the closest fire truck that was going to get there was coming from 10 miles away, I just kiss my house goodbye and hope I had good insurance. One of my family members was ill or injured, I'd be putting them in my car and driving, knowing that I don't know what's coming. You don't have to worry about that.
How long would it take you to get that 10 miles to come? Like how long?
Oh, depends on who's driving. But, the difference of how a fire multiplies, it's how much every minute.
Every 60 seconds.
Every 60 seconds, it doubles.
Yeah.
So if it takes us 10 minutes to get to concrete,
Yeah.
pretty much
fun.
this will buy. We had a call recently to OCC for choking.
our ambulance was called to respond. Now, what do you think the outcome is gonna be of that call? A choking victim at OCC College. That means we've got to drive down through the valley with the OCC. So that's either gonna correct itself, or the person is gonna succumb, one or the other. Because they're putting us in a predicament. How do you think our people feel on that ambulance, knowing that the outcome's not gonna be good? So,
Why is there no one closer? How is there no one
There's
closer?
a lot ambulance.
just what's going on right now. So just, you know, you've got numbers, you've got the. That's not something that I'm gonna change. For us to provide the service, I can tell you that, we have the best group of people. They commit their time, or they wouldn't be in the organization. And, you know, as I spoke the other night at the event they had for me, that, you know, you give your time because that's what you join the organization. The organization is like a second family. So those people that are in that organization become family. You trust them, they trust you. You have to have trust. Every time you go on a call, you've got to be able to trust the person that's sitting in that seat next to you. I don't care if it's an ambulance call or fire call. You got to trust the person in the ambulance call that if something goes awry in a house, a domestic dispute or something, that person's going to have your back. And so, you know, you've got to understand that training comes naturally to these people. So they're going to train just not only to protect themselves, but to protect the people that they're working with. That's the last thing I've been through. Last thing I want to do is lose. So our members work so hard at what they do. They're passionate about what they do. They're committed to what they do. And there's a lot more that you learn on being in the fire service than just going on. And so I just want to let you know that because we're talking about going outside of the territory. And the numbers I'm going to give you on where we have responded that we sometimes don't normally go to, maybe if we're unlucky once or twice, we go to some of these territories. But and just take these numbers I give you and double them, because most likely if we're going there for these amount of calls, Fed was going there for the same amount of calls, because we're helping each other all the time. And I get the calls on my phone all the time. If I know that Fed goes out on a couple ambulance calls, then we're going to Fed. Heaven forbid, we're in Chittenden or we're in Lafayette, because then nobody's going to Fed. But just this year so far, we've covered Eves 9 times, Lafayette 13 times, KVAC 17, Manoa 13, NAVAC, that's North Syracuse, which we found there once, TLC, who the heck knows where they're going to be when we cover them. Tully 11 times. Syracuse, City of Syracuse 60 times. That means that together, we've probably gone there 120 times, at least. Town of Sullivan, 80 times, just for us. So we've talked to the town supervisor, I talked to the mayor in Chittenden. He said, this has got to stop. We've got to come up with a solution. Whether it's charging you or what, we can't continue to play this game anymore.
Yeah.
We don't want to leave you hanging, but we just can't continue this. And it's not just the money. We need to understand that. It's the idea of that our people are there to do a job for the people in the community. Whether it's Manlius, town of Manlius, the village of Manlius, town of Manlius, town of Pompey, Reagan, village of Fayetteville. We're there to protect our community, and we can't be doing it if we're running all over the countryside. And you know, we had to give our chiefs an ultimatum. Minimum crews 7, no matter what, 7. Don't care how you do it, 7 people. we gotta man 2 ambulances and an engine. Because I can't have 4 of our members out on an ambulance in the city of Syracuse or the town of Sullivan and get a house fire across the street from the fire station. How do you explain that? How do I explain it? Or a heart attack across the street. And guess what? Those ambulance that shows up is made that. How do they serve me? The outcome's not gonna be good. So, when somebody's overwatching. So, that's pretty much all I have to say is we're following the same footsteps, we work together and we do the best we can to provide the service, keep the budget at a reasonable effort, but you gotta have manpower, you gotta have equipment, you gotta have the training, and standing is not cheap.
And then for the increase, what it contributes to is staffing, increase in staff.
So the increase of 109,000, there's a 7.4% increase. That's staffing at this point.
Staffing and understand, staffing doesn't just mean their pay.
Yes.
Staffing means their benefits, their retirement, everything. So, which is increased immensely.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody has any questions.
I went through this fast. Does everyone see the charts are?
Yeah, we did.
Well, and it's available on
Yeah.
the agenda.
So
Do we ever have any figures or any data on how many times you guys are out on call, so we have to have mutually come to us in our area because we're out helping other areas?
I don't know.
We can certainly pull that data, wherever it's tonight, you'll see it's a mere fraction of the numbers you just heard for providing elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, especially if you start to look at it as a more collaborative effort. So if Fayetteville excluded the number of times we went to Fayetteville, and we excluded the number of times Fayetteville came to us, we took that out of the mix, you're talking once or twice a month. If that. So there's lots of shared services between us by design.
Yeah.
So if you were to exclude that view and talk about agencies outside of Fayetteville, or maybe provide that ambulance service, literally once or twice a month.
Yeah.
You have the numbers that we gave you at Tuesday night, but we go to the city of Syracuse more than mutual aid than we do the local members.
I think that the ambulance in particular, I think, is a system-wide issue that needs a
Yes,
system-wide solution.
well, to tell you the truth, because I sit on the international fire chiefs, and it's nationwide. Believe it or not, it's nationwide. They're all having issues all over the place, same issues. Offloading times, some of them are worse than the ones we have, and ambulance response times. Not responding to the call, but being available to respond because we're on somebody else.
Because they're stuck at the hospital.
So I think, just to kind of wrap up the conversation part of this, I think we should plan on sitting down as soon as possible to really look at that equity issue so that we can find a way to make sure that budget's funded as equitably as possible. Because I think that would be, if we can figure something out, we should. Because I think that's gotta be the next step for us. Because that'll help us with our budget, it'll help with, your budgets being paid for equitably by the people that are receiving those services, as you would with any other service. So thank you very much.
And we have our open house on Saturday also.
At the same time?
Yeah.
So you go to one, then the
They're
other.
advertising together.
Oh, okay.
Also, while you're there, you can visit, we just finished back in September, we had the vacations, well, how many more, it's all done now.
Oh, great.
With the monuments, with the monument, yes, and stuff like that, so.
Check it out.
So, give me a chance, stop on.
Okay. So is there any public comment on this public hearing for the Manlius fire contract for 2022? In the room, we do not have any attendees are there any attendees that would like to make a public comment?
If any of them say it's in their trouble.
Aye, so seeing no other
So I'll make
requests
a
for
motion
comment,
to close the public. hearing. I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I will make a motion to approve the 2023 Manlius Fire Protection Contract in the amount of $1,845,448 as prepared by the attorney for the town and to authorize the supervisor to sign the contract.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
And thank you for all of you.
Yes. So, next up, to set a date. Noah,
I'd like to make a motion to set a date for a public hearing in the matter of the 2023 Manoa Fire Protection and Emergency Ambulance Service Contract for October 26, 2022 at 6:35 p.m. as outlined in the resolution prepared by the attorney for the town.
all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Yeah. We got our next bid results.
Okay, so with regard to, we did receive, you may recall that we put out to bid, not RFP, we bid for the kayak launch. We did receive a single bidder who was over budget, and we are in discussion with that bidder with regard to, so there's no action for this.
Moving right along, number 9, drainage district number 1, Park Hill Storm Sewer Rehabilitation Bid Packets.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to authorize the supervisor to sign, to actually, is there wording?
Yes.
I'd like to motion to issue a bid for Clarkville Stormwater Sewer Rehabilitation as outlined in the specifications prepared by NJ Engineer. So this is for the phase, I think we're up to 4 of the storm drain rehabilitation in this Clarkville
Is that
area.
the one that they're doing, when they run the pipe through the other pipes?
No, this is,
Oh,
they're actually doing that.
oh, okay,
And so I would like to make a motion to authorize that bid.
I'll second.
What's the amount of it? Oh, the authorized bid, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Can I just, before we do that, this is about the smell too, right?
No.
Mitigating the smell. This is something separate. The
yes.
stormwater, sorry, that's okay.
Good. So second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, we had on the agenda an issue regarding the Murfield Drainage District. This has turned out to be more complicated. We would like to have more time for public input. So how many things are on 10.6?
We have Manoa, we just held Seven Pines, and then we have just a couple of business things, I think.
Okay.
Okay, so we can.
So,
Oh, and we have, as known, is coming to talk about.
yes, okay, so maybe, so then the one after that is the.
It's November 2nd, the next week.
Yep, and there is not very much on that.
So we would like to suggest that there be a public meeting on this issue on November 2nd. So
Information session?
information.
But we're meeting as a board.
Well, we could do it, maybe we could do it as our, because it's the first meeting of the month, right?
Do it as a
Do it at
work
5 o'clock.
session.
Yeah. Do
Okay.
the workshop
So
format.
can we get a notice for a workshop on this topic?
Yes,
Yeah.
so are you talking about, are you talking about notifying the residents within that drainage district that there is something going on?
Mhm.
So, do you know how many?
We did the mailing before it was law.
Yeah, it's a good size district.
Wait, I'm sorry, tell me, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, because we were, you've sent
When
folks.
we did our last meeting, we sent out a public notice
Yep.
to everyone in District 2.
Yep.
And I think that's what we're saying is
But it was
that
like $1,000.
it's pretty costly.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good sized district.
I think we should, this is like, a really expensive endeavor for this drainage district, so I think it's, the communication has to be seen as a cost within it. But I think rather than just sending a, I know that we can't maybe add in other information, there has to be a certain language, but in addition to the language that has to be there for notice for folks, can we give them other information to prepare for the conversation and to make sure it really.
Sure, I mean, you could put, we could put documents on the website and direct them to that.
Yeah.
But if you want to do the work session, we'd have to make a motion tonight to hold the work session to discuss that. And then I'd also need any of those documents that you wanted. And then November 2nd, I'm just thinking.
Does
I
it
mean,
make sense to
that's
push it
a
out to,
pretty-
does it make sense to push it out to the 16th then, to give us the time to prepare?
But if you're gonna include any of that in your 2023 budget, you're gonna need to know before that.
So it has
That's why I'm thinking before the budget. Although this is in the district. So it's.
What are you?
You have to be able to vote on the budget in special districts.
Yeah, we'd have to budget for the
Yes,
expenditure.
I think I think this, that gives you time to put it in the newspaper.
Putting it in the newspaper is not my concern. Getting the mailing together,
Yeah,
that's my
that's-
concern,
yeah.
and getting that out, we can certainly make that happen. Just as long as everyone's aware that puts that pressure on our
Well,
department
and
and.
we're-
Yeah.
We know what the
Yeah,
cost is for, that we've been quoted already for this, so we don't expect it to be any,
Yeah, we can do the budget
More.
without this.
we can do the budget, I think, without,
And that's just for engineering.
right.
It's just
That's what we're
engineering.
looking at.
What
So
we
we're
want
not
them to
looking
know
at
is what's coming after the engineer.
Well,
Is it
that
gonna
is-
happen within 2023 is what we're
That's-
saying?
yeah.
Will it affect your 2023 budget?
Which we won't even have those numbers.
No, we won't.
We won't have the numbers anyway from the.
But we won't do the work
engineering
until
process.
2024.
So we could budget for something,
Well, we would
Rather
budget
than-
for the engineering,
yeah,
understanding that we would go out to bid for a project in 2024.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
so then why do we have, so then we don't have to have that, we wouldn't have to push to have that. ASAP.
That might be actually the right way to do this, is to move forward with the engineering work now. And then when that additional cost, when we know, because right now it's gonna be difficult, because we're gonna tell people, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, like I
But if
still,
we do the due diligence,
Yeah.
it needs to be done.
yeah,
We
but we
know-
don't know that this particular bid is the right bid for the engineering work.
So there's a two-part question.
Right.
Yes, sir, I think the question that we need to look at, and need to talk with MJ, to find out if this quote for engineering is specifically for the phase one of that, of the detention basin, and the repair of that,
Cause it looks
or is
broad.
this more intensive to that whole area? So I think that's a question we need to have with the engineers, maybe have Joel explain that to the board, and where we're headed in what direction, maybe just do an information portion on the engineering and get the project underway.
But it sounds like what we need to do is confirm what the bid is for, move forward with that for this year. And then when we understand what the overall impact of the project will be, that's when we can spend the time, let people know 2 months ahead of time that we're gonna convene a public meeting.
Yeah, because I don't think we need, you're right, we don't need to have a back and forth with folks yet, but what we can do is put informational, we can do a flyer, we can walk. I can walk, it's my neighborhood, I can walk.
Put it in an
in the-
upcoming newsletter, like, I think if we take the public conversation part out, we need to. If I was a resident who was told that there's gonna be a public meeting, and then I go, and then I'm told, well, we still don't know what it's gonna cost, we're actually asking you for your input on finding out what it costs, I would be frustrated. So I think let's double check with the engineers in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We will look to authorize this bid or proposal or a modified proposal. And then into next year, when we know what we're dealing with, we will spend the time to do that outreach and maybe try to piggyback in other ways for communication to make that. happen.
So I'm just trying to understand, do we need to know, maybe this is more of an Ann question, but is that, were you saying that we need to know about spending the 64,000 in the 2023 budget, or?
No, but if there was gonna be any work completed next year in 2023.
Which part of this quote assumes that there is work completed next year?
Right,
That's
what I
true.
mean, that's
So then what we would have to do is we'll have to talk to the engineers and try to get our best guess in the budgeting process.
You have enough of a balance in District 2 to cover the
This
cost
cost,
this
yeah.
year. But it was if there was gonna be any additional work, you need to.
We won't know in time for budget
When
either
you
way.
build that
Yeah,
budget.
so that's gonna be budgeted. item.
So we should be in a good position to November 2nd, vote on an updated,
Well, I think 26 meeting.
yeah, or bid. And then we have to find a way, even if it's not an official notice, to communicate with everyone to let them know things are moving
Just
forward.
to make a plan?
Yeah.
But you don't need anything for
No.
that group?
No, so I think, how about this, Heather? What if we put something in the winter newsletter
Oh, yeah.
about it? And that we will ask MJ to, no, so.
And we
still
can do a
going back
letter
to
to
the-
the editor.
I'm still going back to the agenda. Is 10:26 too busy, or could we have MJ come and talk to us on the 26th?
That would probably have to be the work session. Because we do have a good chunk of stuff.
I mean, we've got B and L talking about the comp plan, we've got Seven Pines again, we've got Manoa Fire District. I mean,
Okay.
that's-
November 2nd.
So let's have him come on, but it could be the regular meeting. It doesn't have to be.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So we will invite Joel to 11/2 meeting.
We'll talk with him beforehand.
Yes,
Yeah, we'll wanna make sure that we have the bid ready to go.
because I'm thinking what I'm gonna ask you to do is break it into two. The preliminary work and then the supervision would be separate, because we don't know what this is, what we're gonna be supervising
You're
yet.
gonna have to go out to bid after they put something together with the engineering side here anyway, but I think we just need to look at the scope
Mhm.
of what we're doing in different phases. I think that's what we've talked about, including the engineering, so we're gonna engineer it section by section, or we're gonna put a whole plan together, you know, what I mean, and go that way. So-
Well, and that's where I think, Sarah, before you said there would, if we find out that there is work that has to be done within 2023,
Mhm.
we would have to move to make a budget amendment to pay for that.
And we would also have to borrow, because the district doesn't have enough money to do it.
Which is an option,
Mhm.
but again, that would be.
So that's a bigger project.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so we are not going to do public notice at this time. Okay, so that got complicated.
And I know we've got Chief Cole on Zoom, we have to promote him. We have a couple items under Chief.
Looking to promote him.
Yes.
That was a great joke, Ted. I said, you can't get any higher. She said, promote him. Bad jokes happening at the other side of the table.
Good ears.
I used to be captain.
Yeah, very good ears.
I am a parent.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
You turn the volume, touch it. Yeah, just through the actual volume, down the bottom right.
I'm out here.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Okay. The surplus radios. And we have a motion prepared, so we've got the Motorola radios that'll be going over to Kirkville.
Yeah, I can make that motion, I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Supervisor, to declare the Motorola radios and accessories surplus and transfer the radios and accessories to the Kirkville Fire District as presented by Chief Kroll.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So next up, Chief, we've got item on here, body worn camera discussion. Could you just fill us and the public in on the current situation?
Yes, of course. So right now, our body worn cameras are from a company called WatchGuard. And we went to those, I think, for like 4 or 5 years ago. And unfortunately, they were recently purchased out by another company called Motorola. And because of that, our current body cameras, they essentially they've discontinued the line. So we can't buy any more body cameras, brand new. And we also cannot have any of our cameras serviced. Right now, I think we have 3 or 4 cameras that are actually in warranty, but they will not service them because they're end of life. In fact, right now, we have 2 of our SPOs, our special patrol officers that were recently assigned to ESM school district. They're operating every single day without a camera because we can't buy cameras for them because they discontinued the line. So we reached out to WatchGuard / Motorola, and they indicated to us that the only way to resolve the solution here is to unfortunately go to a new model, which is a model supported by Motorola. And that would be the only way that we could really reinvigorate or restart the body camera program. Lieutenant Snyder reached out to Motorola, has been working with them quite diligently, and they determined that we needed X amount of cameras, or we determined we needed X amount of cameras, and they gave us the quote that you can see. And Lieutenant Snyder did a great job in trying to get them down in price as much as possible. This new technology, not new, but this technology is kind of expensive.
So it's sort of an emergency purchase because we either replace the body cameras as proposed, or we just go without.
Chief, I had a question.
Yeah.
For the ones that are not working right now, why can't we buy a cheaper camera that has internal memory just for the interim until we can get a solution for this issue?
Body cameras don't really have internal memories, so to speak. There's two different kinds of platforms out there. There's cloud-based, which we had before, and then right now, the cameras that we carry, they collect all their video data on the camera, the internal hard drive, and then at the end of the shift, the officer docks them into a docking station, and then that docking station receives that video and it goes to a server that we have internally. The alternative to that is they do the same thing at the end of the shift. They dock the camera and then it goes into the cloud. And cloud, the reason why we got away from cloud memory is because cloud memory is extremely expensive. So it's really not as simple as just bringing the camera home and downloading it onto a computer. There's only two different types of downloading processes, and not only that, but we would then have two servers with two different video sources. If you had a different type of camera system, it would download onto a different type of database. That was the reason why that I changed like 4 or 5 years ago. I changed over from the previous vendor to the current vendor, is because we also have car cameras, right? So every one of our police cars has a camera. That's still owned by WatchGuard, which was taken over by Motorola. And the idea there, especially with the auto discovery function, because remember, every video we take in the field or from the car, it's subject to discovery, auto discovery. So we have to be able to produce that data to the DA's office within 10 days, in 15 days after the person is arraigned. So what I decided to do years ago is combine those two cameras. So the body cameras and the car cameras are collected, the video is collected in the same source on the same database. And that database is then shared with the district attorney's office under auto discovery. So to go to a different platform, it would be extremely problematic. And it would probably cost more than what we're looking to do right now.
And so is Motorola with this, this quote, is that this is a new model of camera that is that's compatible with the current servers we're running?
Yes.
So basically, rather than going out and looking for systems, which we know would be much more expensive, we are simply looking for a compatible model within our system.
Yeah, and it goes beyond that. Not only are the new Motorola cameras that I'm proposing are compatible with the existing systems, to include the car camera systems, but they're also compatible with the new radios that we just bought. And the town board graciously gave us some funding to replace our portable radios. And this is the thing with Motorola and other large corporations. They lock you in. So these cameras are not only compatible with our existing systems, but they're compatible with our new radio systems as well.
So question though, Chief, this bid from Motorola includes a fee that looks like it's for a new server, a new RAID 6 server. It's about $8,000 for a new server.
Yeah,
So
I'm not a techno guy. I think John knows more about than I do, clearly, but it's my understanding that the old system was on a Microsoft database and the new system is on a new communication,
Oracle or something like that.
So it's a total turnkey to a new system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we could keep the old server in itself, but we'd have to convert it from Microsoft over to whatever the new compatible system is.
Yeah, so I think
I have a question too.
that would be the question though, is that based on what's in that quote, it is for a new physical piece of equipment that would
Which we
be,
probably don't need because we have
That would be the question, is the equipment we have sufficient to be upgraded? And what would be the upgrade cost rather than bringing in a brand new system? Because, I mean, I get it, if you're deploying a type of system like this, you don't tell them, oh, we'll make it work. You say, hey, the system includes a server that fits our specs that we deliver to you, that has all the tweaks. And it's gonna be the question of, is there
But
a
if
cost
their
savings?
server is 5 years old, maybe.
Well, that's,
Yeah, like what are the costs associated with making it work?
I have a question. You said that the Motorola people were not honoring a warranty that we have. Are they giving us a discount for the fact that they're blowing off what they committed to?
the quote does include an incentive to upgrade to Vista of -$7,774.
But they're still leaving us with cameras, we can't,
Well, we would be buying replacement cameras for all of it. So I guess the question too is there any value in the old cameras once we move to the old system? Is there a resale value? We can't, I would assume they won't work with the new system, so we can't use them.
Yeah, we would not be able to use the old cameras. Vista is completely discontinued. I don't think even Motorola has an interest in those cameras. If we did get any kind of a trade back value, that's not included in this existing quote, we would just have to go to an outside police department that maybe still has the Vista systems, and sell it to them, but
Okay. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we want to find out about line number 8, the server. Are we required to buy a new server? Is there an option to upgrade the current server we have? But understanding that right now, we have officers operating without cameras. This is a pretty important thing to consider. Would we be comfortable reconsidering this next week after I talk to Snyder about this quote and work to see if this is accurate of what we would need, or if there would be a cost
I think it
savings
should be in the budget.
for next year?
but I would be interested too in seeing what another company quotes us as well.
Like, do all the officers in other departments use the same system, or is there like a whole alternative system out there?
Because the sheriff's department uses Axion and we use those for our TV.
Well, so to consider too, he did say that these would work with our car cameras
Right.
and with the radios. So it's, if I may, an analogy that I think makes a lot of sense to me. Our police department uses iPhones. We have iPhones, we have iWatches, we have iDevices, iTV, all of those things. We are in a situation where all of our iPhones need to be replaced. But if we were to look at Android or another option, if there is one, we would be looking at, we would be looking at replacing our watches, our TVs,
Except
all
that
these.
we're already using Exxon for
Well,
something.
what kind of leverage, if we don't have that leverage, what leverage do we have on price is really also, like, are there other people buying them?
I think I see where this is off the state contract. Is that true? Chief?
Oh, it's already.
It looks like it's a state contract, New York State OGS, State of New York.
Yes.
Contract 21.
I believe so, yes.
But
That's
this is
the
off of the
best
state
part.
contract.
Okay.
So they've already bid this out and Motorola's come back.
So
So that may be part of why that's the server is included, because that's part of the standard contract, but maybe it doesn't have to.
So there is an option in front of us to approve it with the caveat being that we want to see if we can get it. If there's a lower price for the server.
Do we have to wait for an updated quote, or can we approve this quote?
You could, well,
I'd rather.
again, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is on state contract, right? They're purchasing off of a state contract. So therefore, we can assume it's the lowest price.
Well, and I think the clarification we're looking for is there an item in here that we don't need?
Well, yeah, and you can approve this, subject to review of the
Line
number 8. And if we don't need it, then we don't have to pay $8,200.
So then it's another question of this year or in next year's budget.
We don't even need to approve it, I mean,
Well, we have to approve the quote.
Okay, we're not being asked.
So from a
If anyone wants to
funding,
say
I just have 2 additional questions then. One, I was wondering about warranties on these cameras. And 2, I was wondering about if this includes an annual cost going forward.
I didn't understand that first question, but what was the first question again? I'm sorry.
Is there a warrant, like I know we bought additional, 3-year extended warranties on our cameras last time. Do these just come with a standard 1-year warranty, or is there, are we good for 3 years, or?
So in
I
the-
think that if there was an extended warranty beyond the manufacturer warranty, it would be listed in the quote.
Okay, so then, to your point of the annual cost, there is 2 items in here that have a term of 1 year. So that's the Evidence Library Vista V300 annual device license and support fee. So that's the annual cost of maintaining the cameras. That's at a unit price of $182 or $195 to a total yearly cost of $7,800, which we're currently paying some type of service fee on the current
I
cameras.
didn't see anything up to, our current company,
Okay,
just besides like
yeah,
getting new cameras or,
This is called Vista still?
or maybe, yeah, maybe it's a different.
Vista
design
/
item.
V300 annual device license and support fee.
Yeah, Vista's been discontinued.
So what do we buy?
But that's a legacy name because it's Vista / V300 because they were in the process of phasing out the Vistas. So then there's the other annual fee of term of 1 year, Evidence Library 4RE/M500 annual device license and support fee. That is a quantity of 15 at a unit price of $185.25 or $185.25 for a total yearly fee of $2,778.75.
That's for management of the recording, so we have to have that.
Yeah, so it looks like the annual fee is about $11,000. Maybe 10 to
That's what
11,000.
I have, I have $10,538.
Which what we'll do is we'll look at the budget and see, does this impact?
So I think that like right now, like for 2023, there's a total of 44,850 for cameras and car cameras, and warranties. So we can, I don't know if this can fit in this year's budget or next, so there's definitely.
I think that's the next question is,
Where-
as this is very good argument to make this is an emergency purchase. What does,
Can it be delivered before the end of the year?
Motorola is telling us that they can get the cameras to us sooner than they can clearly get the Vista cameras to us. I'm not sure if it's end of year, but it's, we just have to move on it because, again, we're losing cameras.
So-
Do we fit this in this year's budget?
so that's really the question,
I think
is
you're
have we
right.
looked at that yet? Do we have any idea of
But we still didn't-
what would be left in the
You can
400s?
move money from 100 to 400.
Yeah, you can move within your.
Okay, so if we're going to do it, with the 100, so if we have to move around money in the police budget, does that require a budget amendment? Transfer. So what we might have to do then is because, and
Approve one up to this amount and hope it's less.
approve this, subject to review of line number 8.
Okay.
But then, I guess
That's
that's
where the
really,
budget transfer up to this amount.
I mean, you can make the budget transfer technically at the next.
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking. So what we'll, in the short term,
Yeah.
we'll accept this provisionally on the, looking at line number 8. We will plan to do the budget transfer so that we have an approved quote, so we can get back to them and say, we have provisionally approved this, we have a question about this. And then we can figure out where the money's coming from. If we need a budget transfer, make that at the next meeting, and then they can move ahead with the purchase this year.
Potentially, the department could issue a purchase order, chief, correct, and, you can modify that amount, need be, that way it will kind of hold a place in line to
Yeah.
get these sooner rather than later.
Okay, I think that's the best case scenario.
I
No,
agree.
but The fact that it was a state, I missed the fact that it was a state contract, that would change the
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the conversation, because I think we ended up with a good outcome for a pretty bad situation.
Again, I'm assuming it's a state contract because it says it on the.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Okay, so
we don't have a prepared. So,
I'll just say, can I, Mr. Supervisor, can I make a motion to accept quote 1783730 for the updated new compatible Motorola body cameras and accessories, subject to a review of line number 8 in the bid, which is for
which is for the
server.
physical server.
the physical server.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Chief. So then next up, we have the flock camera agreement and grant. If you can kind of bring us up to speed on that as well.
Yeah, so every year I apply for what's called a SHLEP grant, and I don't even have the definition of that in front of me, but it's, I call it SHLEP. I think I'm slipping a couple letters in there, yeah. So it's federal funding that's distributed at the state level, like a lot of these grants are. We apply every single year. They keep changing the priorities on what can be utilized for this grant. Essentially, the county takes a good chunk of it. The city takes a greater chunk of it, and then whatever's left over is for town and villages. So town and village agencies in Onondaga County submit their proposals, and then they try to divvy it up as evenly as possible. And the county sheriff's department has actually been doing a great job in managing this project. So having faced multiple options on what to utilize for this particular grant, I learned from my partners in law enforcement that both the city police department and the county sheriff's department were spending almost all of their funding on these flock camera systems. So just to back up a little bit, a flock camera is not in the traditional sense a camera. It's not a surveillance device. It's not anything like that. What it is really is what we call an LPR, which stands for license plate reader. So the county spent $47,000 or $48,000 on 10 or 12 of these cameras. The city's putting in 30 of them. And what they do essentially is just monitor traffic on main routes, and they register license plate data and vehicle descriptions. The grant itself is really for sort of like hardening, if you will, soft target areas for domestic terrorism. And as you know, our villages in particular have parades and other public functions every single year. And I thought that it would be a great idea to utilize this funding, this 100% funding, there's no matching funds with this grant, to try to harden those soft targets specifically related to domestic terrorism, but at the same time, share data with the county and the city and any other town or village agency that decides to jump on board with the flock systems. That's one nice thing about the flock program is we all share each other's data. So I'm going to be able to collect data from cameras in the city and wherever they're positioned throughout the county, as well as any other town or village agency. And to me, that seemed not only desirable, but I think very consistent with this grant program. Having said that, I submitted for 3 cameras. I was going to put one in each village on the main streets in each village. Unfortunately, because I'm a town agency and because I'm dealing with the crumbs left over from the county and the city, I only received funding for 1 camera. So I reached out to Mayor Olson in the village of Fayetteville, and I asked him if he would be opposed if we would put a camera on really the busiest road in the township, which is Route 5 through the center of Fayetteville. And Mayor Olson said, absolutely no problem whatsoever. Then I reached out to the state and found out that the state had no requirements for permitting because it's going to be on a village pole. And even though it'll be monitoring traffic in the village of Fayetteville, both eastbound and westbound in the most narrow portion of Route 5, we were able to jump that hurdle as well. So I reached out to Flock and asked them if that was possible, and they said it was. And the only thing I'm looking for really tonight is a motion to allow the town supervisor to sign an agreement with Flock that I think everybody saw to allow us to engage with that community along with the city police department, the sheriff's department, any other town and village agency that wants to jump on board.
Some questions, so feel free.
So one of the things that we're concerned about is the resident awareness that this is going on. and suggest that perhaps this would be appropriate to bring to the police committee and have more of a dialogue about that with people who are concerned about public safety, and just to have a more opportunity for the public to be aware that their license plate will be scanned when they drive down the track. And perhaps
Yep.
to know that they're also gonna have their license plate scanned when they go to Syracuse.
Well, I mean, there's two things to that. One, Mayor Olson is also, he's aware of it and he's already approved it. It's going to be in the village of Fayetteville. So at this point, having one camera in Fayetteville will really only affect those folks traveling through the village of Fayetteville. Number two, this is nothing more than what we already have on our police cars. You may or may not be aware, but 6 of our police cars currently are floating around the town of Manlius collecting license plate data. That's something that we signed on to 10 or 12 years ago. It's something that every other agency in the entire county of Onondaga has been doing for years. But in addition to that, there is case law after case law after case law that has identified that floating around, or not floating around, but driving around on a public street, you have zero expectation of privacy. So as much as I understand that, and I'm sympathetic to that, and I understand that process, I look at this as nothing more than what we're doing every single day currently and have done for the last 12 years. The only difference is it's at a fixed location versus a mobile location, which is on the back of our police cars.
And I would believe the residents might want to know that the police cars are doing that too.
Yeah, they actually are aware of it. About 10 years ago, there was a large splash media thing that came out, and that's when a lot of the case laws were determined that your license plate on your car traveling on a public roadway, there's zero expectation of privacy. And if you recall, the city of Syracuse, when they put up their cop cameras, which is a different platform, it doesn't register just plate readers. It actually takes video of public streets. They went through a whole public awareness campaign, if you will. And, certain entities of the public came out and were unhappy with it. But the reality is that this is just a great way to use technology to help in what we're faced with every single day in law enforcement. So I don't think it's,
I'm somewhat familiar with the fact that you don't have a right to privacy on a public road. I just think that there'd be an opportunity here for the residents to understand better, maybe understand better what security is being put into place on their behalf.
There's a lot of questions, and I know when Syracuse implemented their cop cameras, there was a lot of questions specifically around who owns the data, who data security, and the principles of, lack of an assumption of privacy on a roadway or in a public place is pretty well understood by most folks. But what most folks don't really have a handle on is the exponentially greater ability to collect, maintain, and analyze data that has blossomed in the last 8 to 10 years. And so there are some very righteous and correct concerns from a broad base of constituents about privacy. And so we would certainly want to have a broader discussion to allay some of those concerns.
that's
And I
a
think
good point.
It's a private company owning this data, not the police department.
No, if I can just intercede real quickly. If you read the contract that I'm asking for you to give the town supervisor to sign, it says there that the data is exclusively owned by the town of Manlius. And the data is only, and the data is collected, the data is deleted after a 30-day period. And the data doesn't include facial recognition. It's only plates and vehicle descriptions.
It also said it was doing audio and video recording as well.
No, that's video, yes, but not audio.
It said audio, and it says
It
audio.
does say audio in the agreement, but
It does say audio.
this is the difference between a permanent camera
in a vehicle that's traveling around, honestly, not a fixed camera.
Also, the original idea behind the grant, which in this course of this conversation, Chief, I would like to make sure that you understand that I am not questioning your ability to imagine and appreciate the benefits to law enforcement in solving crime. But I want us to, as a town board, reiterate to the people our commitment to making sure that they have a way to express what they're interested in terms of law enforcement as well. Not that they are experts, but that they want to talk about from a citizen's perspective, what's going on for them, and that it's not just one direction. So you naturally have expertise and have these amazing channels where you can have these conversations at the federal level, the state level, the county level, and you put together the grant proposals, but we don't have a strong enough system here yet where the people know what's going on, can feed into things, ask questions. It's not strong enough. And that's why we suggested that something like this could also be that you as a practice could bring things to the police committee. And ideally, what was recommended from the Public Safety Advisory Committee, having a more involved and engaged, citizen. That's a practice that if we don't practice it, it won't happen, and there won't be more engagement. The same way that you have amazing officers putting things onto Nextdoor and using the community support unit, they're engaging folks. We want to make sure that your process is supported. We want people to be able to understand why you're doing this and feed in and ultimately support what's happening, but they cannot do that if we're chasing them. The other thing is, I think that we're always in these situations where there's a great new thing and then we get locked in, and there are unintended consequences, even with working with this company Flop. We just had the conversation about body cameras. And so I think that's why we have it go through the police committee, because someone who's in tech can also say, hey, here's this new thing that's coming online, or whatever it is. Or, oh, here's how this is gonna, interact with something.
So the request, it seems, is that we would like maybe a similar presentation to this at the police committee and allow
And then the
residents.
public knows that's happening.
The city of Syracuse Police Department, before they put up their license plate readers around there, they did send a survey out to residents in the area to get their feedback on it as well. Before putting
Just
them
like
up.
public outreach.
Yes, there was public.
So that's
outreach.
really, so I think that's
That's
what we're
the main
hearing is
point.
that
It's not the.
the board would like.
And, I know I'm not an expert in law enforcement,
Yep.
so I
So
would be
we would
happy.
like to find a mechanism to get some public input on this, open up a dialogue, have a conversation, and then potentially move forward if the public is generally in
Well,
favor.
I think it's just for the public to understand, the public doesn't have to be in favor of it, but we want them to.
So
They're
we-
gonna see
okay.
a camera, and
We
they're gonna
wanna-
know somebody's looking at them, well, who is it?
So we want to, so ideally, at the police committee, we would ask for a similar presentation like this, maybe some visual aids or something like that. And then we would be in a process to further communicate. It would be in the newsletter, we put it on the website, we would talk about it in another town board meeting. So we would bring the residents along with us as we move down this path.
Yeah, because right now, Chief, we have, what's gonna go into the record on this is certainly we have this recording. But what's going into the record is the anecdotal piece of you telling us the story of how it came to be, plus the thing. And we, I think, as a community, as a town board, and as legislators, need to be able to establish why the decisions were made and why the representative of the people voted the way they did. And that's what's going on here. It's that.
No, I understand. I understand completely. Just understand there's two different, this is my fault, right? Because I didn't explain it properly, but the city of Syracuse put it out for public opinion because there were literally video cameras that were recording people. That's called a cop. That's called a cop camera.
License plate reader. No, they did it for their license plate readers that they put out.
You have to understand, there's two different systems that the city's using. One is a actual surveillance camera, and the second is an LPR camera, which only records license plates, right? So it's not surveillance, and I agree. We'll bring it to the police committee. We'll go. I just wanted to make sure that people understand there's a distinction between the two different types of technologies. The one I'm proposing doesn't surveil people, it doesn't record faces or individuals. It only records plates on vehicles traveling on Route 5 in Fayetteville, in this case, eastbound and westbound. The city cameras are totally different, where they
I think that's
actually
a good-
take the video.
That's a good jumping off point for the discussion, is to explain, hey, an update. If you weren't here when the cameras went on the cars that scan license plates, this is a technology we use. This is why it's so incredibly effective and why we continue to use it. Also, we are looking at expanding our capability of undergoing this service. And we wanted to let people know, as a reminder, our police department has a lot of tools at their disposal and they use them effectively. However, we want you to know, and that's, I mean, I wasn't here when that conversation was had.
I would say,
Here was that.
this is an effective tool. Next year, you're gonna wanna put them in Manoa and Manlius, and then maybe on the 257, and so this would be something residents should just know is happening.
And I think it's more so, we want to be a little bit more proactive, rather than someone seeing a camera and saying, what's the camera?
Yeah.
We just want to make sure we've primed folks. So I think in general, we're interested in this. We'll table this for after the police committee meeting, and we will come up with some kind of communication plan, something like that, that we can bring to the public. And that way we can feel like we've done our due diligence to bring people along with us in these decisions. And then we can reconsider the contract then. I don't think I saw a expiration date on there. Although I'm sure it's, they want it as soon as possible. But if we take the next 2 weeks, we'll come up with a communication plan. Does that sound good to everybody?
When would the police committee be?
That's
It's the
what I said.
26th.
Okay.
And so in the meantime,
Oh, no, it's fine, it's just another thing on top of.
Yeah, I hear you.
Like, you're so
But-
much.
but we'll definitely, we'll do everything we can to communicate that out. Maybe even look to the police department to help us in that with their amazing network on social media and everything else.
Facebook stuff.
There we go. All right. Thank you very much, chief.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, being mindful of time, town manager updates.
So, next Wednesday, we have foodie trucks coming in, they're doing their food clinic, so it's open to employees and their family members. They're gonna want some food shop, everyone just needs to bring their ID cards. And that's from 9 to 11, they'll have their certified pharmacists, vaccine supplies, everything. So if you want to get a food shop, just let me know, because I have to get back to food trucks with a number of folks that are attending. And then the next day, next Thursday, the 20th, from 10 to 2, we're doing our benefits fair. So benefit vendors, representatives like our 457 plan, Colonial, Guardian, those representatives will be here to speak individually with employees. If they have questions, they'll go over that with them in detail. Hermont is also bringing a nurse to do like blood pressure and BMI screening. So we'll have like refreshments, we raffle, and we've done it in years past too.
Do the police officers come to this?
They do.
Yeah, I went last year, it was really, I talked to all the vendors, it was really informative. Thanks. Are you gonna have a vegan option for lunch? Oh, maybe a vegan sandwich.
You asked, and you were given a very acceptable answer.
Can I get like a pita tray or something?
Could be bread.
There you go.
The next item up is an amendment to the pilot agreements for the solar arrays on North Eagle Village and Green Lakes Road. In the words of the supervisor, we are amending it to align with the town's fiscal year. We received the 2022 payments this year for both of those in September. Generally, our pilot payments come in after the first of the year because that's generally, we're collecting taxes, so that's the time. So I did work with the company to amend that. The language just states payments for the town should be mailed to 301 Berkeley Drive and are due no later than September 15th for the first year, calendar year, 2022, and no later than January 31st, beginning on the second year. So starting in 2023 with the second payment, the amendment would just be for.
And they defined what the year was, because that was.
Yes,
the
that
first
was
thing we didn't know. What's the first year?
What year one was.
It was actually our choice. And they just.
But now it's defined so that those of us that are not here in 15 years or less, so we'll know what years you know, the pilots run. So it would just be a motion to.
So I make a motion to amend the Novus pilots for the Eagle Village and Green Lakes Road locations to align with the town fiscal year.
All in favor? Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, town clerk?
Yes. Okay, so we have a contract with the ISPCA for dog control and coastal investigation services. We are very generally happy with the contract. We're very generally happy with the services. Dog control is a difficult quality of life issue. And so sometimes people will be unhappy with the outcomes, but that has to do with the fact that maybe their dog is running at large or things like that. I will say, on the onset of this conversation, we do not have a lot of options for dog control. In the past, we have had our own dog control officer, and we shared it with the town of DeWitt. That was a really long time ago. The police department is not a place to have close investigations or dog control, just because the nature of the training and the services and what we need to provide. And Chief and I talked about that at like prior chief a long time ago. That's just not an option. Every year they've given us a contract. They have not, as you can see in the numbers they gave you, they have not increased our dog control contract for the entire time that we've run with them. And given the cost of gas, the vehicles that they maintain, things like that. And yeah, and they are not for profit, so they do have other resources, but I don't think that what they're asking is unreasonable. We're talking about giving them a $3,000 increase this year and then 2.5% and signing a 3-year contract with them. And then for cruelty, it would be a 2.5% increase. And I broke down for you what the exact increase amounts would be. They're not substantial related.
I like the way this was presented very much.
Oh, thank you.
It's just inflation.
And I'm trying to get data from them on, just to give back to you guys on the number of calls that we have. Cruelty is gonna be one of those sort of issues where you get one cruelty house and we don't have a contract and there is a number of animals in the home that, I mean, that could be a $30,000 cost that we didn't expect, so this contract makes sense for that. Dog control is a pretty steady issue. It is a quality of life issue, so when it is something that is happening to you, with your neighbor, it is very important to you. So we try to make sure that that service is maintained. So I guess what I'm looking for tonight is kind of some feedback from the board before we go back to the CMYSPCA and say, yes, give us the new proposed contract with these amounts. They'll draw that up for us, and I'll obviously give it to our attorney. Is that something that we're interested in? I see a lot of yes. So I will just note for the record that, you know, you directed me to get that contract, and I will hopefully have it for you. I like to get it done before the first of the year so that the contract's in place so there are no jurisdiction issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is me. So we have the conceptual site plan for the new town hall, proposal for engineering services. So Sarah and I took a walk through the proposed property a few weeks ago. It was very wet. It was a bad day to take a walk with the property. Almost fell down a ridge too. That was fun. But what we were doing our best to ascertain is this site something that's going to fit the facility that we're looking for? Obviously, the facility we're looking for is still somewhat up in the air, but we have some feasibility studies. We have a general understanding of a footprint, what we're looking for, parking, what we're looking for. And so this is a proposal, as I said it to our engineer, what's the minimum we can do to give us direction to know that this is a site we may or may not be interested in the future? Does it fit a building? Yet to be determined, that would meet our needs. So it's a $5,000 proposal, which is, we have room in the budget for it. And this will help us kind of steer ourselves as we move forward with the.
So does this come out of the engineering?
Yeah.
Line?
Yeah, this is routine.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to, do I have one question? I'd like to make a motion to authorize the supervisor to sign and accept the proposal from MJ Engineering dated September 30th, 2022 for the engineering services for the development of a conceptual site plan for the potential new town hall located along North Burdick Street, in the amount of $5,000. Yeah, I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
For the.
Okay, motion carries. Yeah, it is. Okay, next up, keep rolling. We've got the contract for snow removal around town hall. I believe, is this, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the same rate we were going for the sidewalk
I
contract,
believe it's the same rate as last year.
Wow.
the shoveling contract?
It sounds.
Yeah, it's not, it can't be far, yeah, exactly.
I'm pretty sure it's the same rate.
Yeah. I know, because you were the liaison for buildings and grounds.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022-2023 seasonal contract with Aspinalls for the shoveling of sidewalks at Town Hall at a rate of $180 per visit.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Budget timeline update. Calendar for this one. So due to the way this year's schedule, holidays, election day, all kind of pan out, we are in a position where we would have had to have a prepared preliminary budget for tonight, which I just had delivered the tentative budget only 2 weeks ago. So what we are looking to do is schedule a special meeting on November 9th, at which, once we schedule that meeting, we cannot set the date for the public hearing yet, because we need the preliminary budget to set the date for the public hearing. So what we're doing is setting a special meeting for November 9th at 6:30 PM here at Town Hall, which,
could soon be the public hearing,
exactly.
but,
So I'm looking for a motion.
so
to
I'd be happy
schedule-
to make a motion to schedule a special meeting on November 9th.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Councilman Wilson.
Allison, you said the December one was different too?
Yes, due to the holidays. That's what we approved in the organizational meeting.
Yeah, November and December, it's the 1st and 3rd, which caveat that we got a couple. Forgot about it.
So from Dear Committee folks, there's not really a huge update. There's not a lot to report on. I met with the village liaison for Fayetteville last week so that he could review the intermunicipal agreement again and got back to me on any feedback on that, but it's pretty boilerplate. We're gonna continue with it. My point of wanting to have a report out is just, time is really ticking. There have been a handful of property owners, and part of the interests of the USDA for us, for our plan, is to develop more properties, to include more properties within the town and in the program as deemed appropriate by USDA. To date, there have really only been 3 to 4 property owners interested in participating. So I wanted to at least have another opportunity, because the clock is ticking, to please reach out to the town, myself directly, or anybody, town board, for consideration for inclusion in this year's culling program.
Do they have to be, at one point, they had to be somehow contiguous to Fayetteville? Is that true anymore, or can anybody?
No, it's anybody.
And I know there's a petitioning process that goes into it.
There's a petitioning process, and that's one of the only other updates here, is that we were able to review that for a 5-year period. So if you're participating and you want to be part of the program, your adjacent properties need to be in cahoots with you. And rather than pestering the same neighbors every year, they can now sign on for a 5-year period.
Oh, that's fantastic. We had requests to extend.
Is there any requirements, what makes you say?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
USDA has one, yeah. They are-
They're extensive, which is again why I really wanted to just call out people who might have an interest to please contact me quickly.
So let's try also too to get some criteria to say what might make your home a good site, and try to get that out to
Yeah,
social
that would
media
be
and through an
helpful.
email.
Do you have some, presumably it has to be a certain acreage or something?
Yeah, the thing is, yeah, there's information in the report, so we can ask actually for a, from the USDA to say the points, because I feel like we don't.
And maybe the ask too is not just your home, but your neighborhood.
Yeah.
To say, because what we would probably have to do is find the neighborhood that's interested and then find a suitable property for it.
Yep.
Good, great, thank you.
Just so everyone knows, you should be expecting an IMA, an intermunicipal agreement with the village of Fayetteville very soon. We'd like to get that approved around the same time.
For the Deer Committee.
Yes.
Exactly.
Because they're the ones that basically broker the program and we sign on to it, right?
Yeah, so we'll be signing an IMA with the.
And the county contributes funds to it.
Fantastic. Is that all?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so next up, we have Sustainable Manlius, and the model pull this resolution declaring support for the New York State Climate Action Plan. We have in New York State, the CLCPA, that's the major climate action legislation that the Climate Leadership and Communities Protection Act that many are familiar with, that was passed a couple years ago, and we needed a plan to implement it. So we had at SUNY ESF earlier this year, there was a committee brought together, a local council to hear from the community on what they wanted to see and to give feedback to put together the draft scoping plan. And now the Climate Action Council is putting together the final plan based on the comments from that and the input from the public and expert advisors. So this resolution is coming from our municipality in support of the Climate Action Council and putting together the plan to move forward with implementation of the CLCPA. So I'd like to make a motion. These are helpful if I could find it. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution declaring support for the New York State Climate Action Plan as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Sustainable Manlius meets tomorrow at 7 right here at Town Hall, so you should come.
Fantastic. The
There's your vote.
table, okay.
Minutes are tabled until next time. I just wanted to have them on the agenda and just sort of flip for them typically as a draft there.
Perfect. The next up, we have the approval of abstract number 19.
So, Mr. Supervisor, I have a motion to approve abstract number 19, $166,579.33. Paving is apparently finished. No paving money this year, so it means it's winter.
We get a week or two of fall.
They're ending on a high note.
Oh, my goodness.
I know, but I'm just saying the meeting.
I look for a second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So I'm looking for a motion.
Yeah.
Yep, a motion to go into executive session to discuss a
Pending litigation matter.
pending litigation matter and a collective bargaining.
Yeah.
Okay.
A change to a collective, yes, potential change to a collective.
I would make that motion to go into executive session to discuss a pending collective bargaining
Litigation.
pending litigation and a change to collective bargaining agreement.
Good. I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. So we will go into executive session. We need like an air. Okay,
So dim.
because it was turned off, so they're gonna, there you go.
Good.
Okay, we're waiting for Attorney Protesky to lead us in the motion.
Okay, we have to enter into, there are 3 tax certiorari cases that we are involved in. One is for 400 Clinton Street, and we need to enter into an agreement with CNY Pomeroy Appraisers to do an appraisal for that property based on a letter, a proposal they have provided dated April, October 3rd. And it will be an appraisal at the cost of $15,000, which we will share with the school district.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm sorry, that was for town center. That was for town center. That was for town center.
I think it's.
Rewind.
That's town center
So do you wanna
retirement
remake the
community
motion?
located
So
at
the
3900 Medical Center Drive.
The 15,000 is
Yes,
the town center.
for the big one.
So I make a motion to approve the appraisal of, for town center
At $15,000.
for 15,000.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
So I'll also make a motion for
For the craftsman.
400, for the craftsman, which
For,
is
7300 East Genesee Street.
300 East Genesee Street.
And the appraisal cost on that is $12,000, and that's for, and it's again with CNY Pomeroy Appraisers Inc.
I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And then the final one is for an appraisal to cost up to $8,000. And that's for 400 Clinton Street, Village of Fayetteville. And that is with Bruckner, Tillett, Rossi, Cahill, and Associates.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the supervisor to enter into an agreement with the PBA, the Police Benevolent Association, to amend our collective bargaining agreement with a side letter to adjust our shifts, our scheduling from 6 days on, 3 days off to 4 days on, 3 days off, and adjust the shift times themselves from 8 hours to 10 hours. So we're calling this the
10-hour
10-hour
proposal.
10-hour
And that is
proposal.
the side letter will be for next year.
And this, thank you. And the side letter will be for next calendar
Next calendar year.
beginning next calendar
That will
year.
only be in effect for the next calendar.
Okay, and it'll only be in effect, because this
For
is
2023.
for 2023.
Okay.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion